Dear Naruto Lemon fans, I'm thrilled to invite all of you to my Boosty channel, where you can enjoy exclusive Naruto Lemon scenes in a comfortable and supportive community. Choose from various subscription tiers, from Mini Lemon to God Lemon, and gain access to unique content tailored just for our fans. Plus, subscribers to over Naruto Lemon and God Lemon will receive special mentions in my videos. Support my channel and dive deeper into the world of Naruto today. Dare. Where are we going? Naruto whined as he was being pulled by his friend. I already told you, we're going to the arena. Kawato exclaimed, his black hair dancing in the sunlight. Don't you know what's going on today? Not interested. Naruto responded, causing his friend to roll his eyes. Come on, you've never even seen any of the elemental knights in action. This is a great chance. I mean, we actually got free tickets. Now come on. I thought you never liked going to these kind of events. Naruto said, hoping to still convince the boy of changing his plans. Well, not this one. Kawato replied instantly, besides everyone in the Empire of Fire is coming down to Konoha just to attend this event. Don't you think we're lucky we got this for free? Naruto made no comment, so Kawato added in, besides maybe you'll see a couple of cute girls too. Naruto groaned and simply allowed his friend to just pull him to whatever destination Kawato wanted to go. He was just fine a couple of minutes ago, enjoying a bowl of ramen at the orphanage when without a word, Kawato had dragged Naruto away from his meal and said they were going to the arena. The arena of Konoha, a stadium in the center of the capital, was a structure that allowed at least 20,000 people to witness any event that was being held. However, Naruto realized that Kawato had not told him what even they were going to watch, only something about some knights going to do something. The young blonde bothered to not ask, seeing as he would find out soon enough anyway. Indeed, Kawato was right. However, there were a large number of people moving in the direction of where the stadium was located. They were all chattering amongst themselves excitedly, not paying attention to the two 10-year-old orphans at all. Whatever it was, it seems that this event was popular. It seemed. The Fire Empire was huge after all, consisting of a large amount of villages and towns in its control, with Konoha being the capital of the empire. The king of Konoha lived here, as well as the Hokage, considered as the most powerful knight under the command of the king. Naruto never paid much attention to any of this stuff. Alright, we're here. Kawato said excitedly. Naruto cringed at the sight. They were now in a long line, and from what Naruto could see, the place was packed with people. Even though they had around 20 lines, it was still not enough, as more and more people entered the lines. Ugh, do we really have to watch this? I mean, look at the line. It's going to take forever. Naruto exclaimed. Well, we're just going to be patient. Trust me, Naruto, it's going to be worth it. Naruto sighed, you better be right. Or else, I'm going to make you clean my room for a week. Believe it. Fortunately for the two orphans, the whole ordeal only lasted for 30 minutes before they arrived at the ticket booth. After handing their tickets, they were allowed to pass, prompting Kawato to run into the entrance while dragging Naruto along with him. The two simply followed the crowd in the corridor, assuming that it would lead to where the seats would be located. On the walls of the corridor were several lit torches to bring some light into the dark tunnel, the flames dancing on the torches as if to entertain those who passed by in the tunnels. As the pair followed the adults, the blonde could still hear the endless chatter. With Naruto's curiosity finally got the better of him, the blonde nudged his friend on the ribs. So, what are we actually watching? Naruto whispered to his friend. The Ascending. Kawato answered, as if the answer was something to mean something. And what is that? You really don't pay much attention on what's happening in Konoha, do you? Just tell me already. Naruto ordered as the pair turned a corner in the corridor. Kawato laughed at this. Alright, I'll explain to you. The Ascending is a yearly event that Konoha holds at this stadium. Anyone in the army can participate, but of course they don't, because only the best of the best qualifies into the finals, which is today. Naruto nodded in understanding and Kawato continued, and the reason why everyone is excited about the Ascending is because most of the time, only the best of the elemental knights make it through. There are only a select few who become elemental knights, and to actually get to see them in action for us civilians is great. Naruto shrugged and then asked, so, what's an elemental knight? Kawato stared at Naruto with eyes that said, are you serious, kind of look, but Naruto merely stared back, expecting an answer. Kawato facepalmed at this but then realized that it was not really surprising. Naruto held little interest in the affairs of Konoha, preferring to simply eat his ramen at the orphanage and survive the next day. You seriously never heard of what an elemental knight is? Kawato said in disbelief. I mean, I know you don't really care about a lot of things that's going on, but you must have at least heard what they are, right? Nope, Naruto confirmed nonchalantly, the only thing I care about is just getting out of the orphanage and living my life. But since I'm here and whatever going on here, this Ascending. Yeah, I'm going to need to know in detail what these elemental knights are. By now the two boys had walked out of the corridors and entered the stands. A large number of people were already taking the nearest seats they could find, meaning the place was a free seating. Naruto and Kawato quickly searched for 2 free seats, which they found quickly enough. So what is an elemental knight? Naruto asked as he sat down. The elemental knight is the elite forces of the Fire Empire's military force. However, they are not just ordinary soldiers, but they can manipulate the natural elements on their weapons, thus the name elemental knights. Of course not everyone can use the elements, thus it is not just the skills needed to become an elemental knight but also the ability to use an element on your weapons. Kawato explained. Wait, you mean they can use like, fire on their swords or something? Kawato nodded. That's an example, I guess. There are altogether 5 elements, I think. Lightning, fire, earth, water and air are the 5 elements that the elemental knights normally use. Whoa. Okay, now I think I know why everyone's so excited. Naruto muttered, looking at the stadium getting full with people. Kawato crossed his arms on his chest. Still, that doesn't mean only those who can manipulate the elements are allowed to become the elemental knights. Some who cannot manipulate any elements but are extremely skilled in their skills are allowed to be elected to become an elemental knight. Although to be frank, I find it's kind of stupid to be called an elemental knight when you don't control any natural element, but that's just my opinion. There are some who can become an elemental knight without controlling an element? Yeah, Kawato answered, however those are rare cases. Like one of them, his name is Mato Guy, I believe. He's one of the best lancers in the whole of Konoha and can't control any natural element. Another good example was the late Hokage, the Yellow Flash of Konoha. Now that was a familiar title that Naruto knew. The Yellow Flash of Konoha was one of the most famed swordsmen, but Naruto had no idea he was an elemental knight. He had died on one of the major battles between the Fire Empire and the Lightning Empire, but only because he sacrificed himself so that his team could complete the mission. The Yellow Flash wielded dual blades as his weapon, and was said that his weapons were made out of his gold, and his speed along with his reflexes earned him the nickname of the Yellow Flash. He was the one man that Naruto paid attention to for reasons that Naruto could not understand. Still, he had no idea the man was considered an elemental knight. So, the elemental knights will be participating in this Ascending, and then what? Naruto questioned. This competition is all to show everyone who is the best. It is all about gaining reputation for yourself, and with that, you will have a much easier life. It must be really great, huh? Kawato was in a dreamy state at this point. That's all they get? Kawato shook his head. Well, no. Also, the one who beats everyone will have the honor to face the strongest elemental knight of the Fire Empire. The Hokage. Whoever wins in that duel will become the new Hokage, but I'm sure even you know that the Hokage have not changed hands for the past 20 years. Basically, he is the third Hokage of the Elemental Knights and has not changed hands in a long time. Is he that powerful? Naruto asked in a curious tone. Well, he's known as the Professor because he knows every technique, stance, skill, and weapons known in the world. He uses that knowledge to adept and attacks his opponent's weak spot. So even in his old age, that guy is still the most powerful elemental knight of the Fire Empire. He can manipulate an element as well? Yeah. I think it's the fire element, but I'm not sure. I also don't know what type of weapon he uses. Kawato replied. And elemental knights get an easy life. That's for sure. Kawato sighed, man, I wish I could become an elemental knight. Soon enough the crowd began cheering as the first two contestants entered the arena. On the left side, the man wielded what seemed to be a broadsword infused with lightning, and his opponent, a woman with long black hair with red pupils wielding a shield and a mace, the mace surrounded in flames as well. Naruto was enthralled at the sight, watching the two elemental knights battle it out. The crowd cheered loudly each time one of them almost defeated the other, only for the opponent to counter. It was almost impossible to tell who was going to win. However, the sight mesmerized Naruto, seeing such swift movements excited him. Alright. I made my decision. Naruto said with a smirk. Huh. I'm going to become an elemental knight. Believe it. 8 years had passed since Naruto first witnessed the ascending that was held at the Konoha Stadium. Ever since then, Naruto had the desired dream to become an elemental knight for the Fire Empire and studied whatever he could on the elemental knights. The blonde boy soon learnt that one needed to be at least 18 years old before they could register for the elemental knight examination, so Naruto tried to do whatever sort of training he could to improve himself for the next 8 years. But of course his options were much more limited. As an orphan, Naruto had no funds to enter the prestigious military academy in Konoha, so his knowledge of swordsmanship, tactics, strategy and other military knowledge was very little. So Naruto instead studied what he could in the Konoha library, which only helped him a little, but it was the best he could ask for. Later on, when Naruto and Kawato were kicked out of the orphanage at the age of 15, the age limit, and used up the money they saved to rent an apartment. A few days later, Naruto landed himself and Kawato a job as assistants in a ramen restaurant, which so happened to be Naruto's favorite place and was also the #1 customer. It wasn't much, but it helped pay the bills and survive. Now that Naruto was 18 years old, he could finally begin his journey to achieve his dream. Alright, I'm going to go register for the Elemental Knights examination, Naruto told his boss, Tsuchi, wish me luck. Hey Naruto, where do you think you're going? Tsuchi demanded from the kitchen, work isn't over for the next few hours. Dad, he has the Elemental Knights exams today, remember? I am, the daughter of Tsuchi, reminded. Tsuchi seemed to have calmed down for a second but was still furious, so he directed his anger to the other person, hey Kawato. You better be working twice as hard now that Naruto's gone. Eh? That's not fair. Well, too bad. Tsuchi responded, life's not fair and Naruto's gone for the day now. So, you're going to be working for 2 people in his stead instead. Naruto chuckled as he ran out of the ramen restaurant. Honestly, that Tsuchi was such a hard ass sometimes, but Naruto knew that Tsuchi was not going to follow through with that threat. Kawato knew it as well and were just playing along. Although Tsuchi took the 2 of them to work for him, Tsuchi saw them as sort of sons that he never had. He had always taken care of Naruto, feeding the boy and sometimes giving the boy free bowls of ramen. Naruto normally insisted on paying, but whenever Tsuchi could, he would help the boy with whatever he could. So Kawato and Naruto basically helped in the kitchen while Ayam handled the orders. But of course, Naruto had the dream of becoming an elemental knight, so Tsuchi dreamed of having the restaurant inherited by Ayam. However, women were normally seen as not suitable owners, so Tsuchi hoped Kawato would marry his daughter, thus allowing the 2 to inherit the ramen restaurant. Still, he was still strong despite his age, so he could still run the place. The registration for the Elemental Knight's exam was held at the military academy, so that was Naruto's destination. Most of the graduates entered the academy at the age of 9, learning everything they needed and graduated at the age of 18, a 9-year course. There, whoever wanted to try to become an Elemental Knight was free to try and register for the exams. The others who had no such dreams were allowed to join the army of the Fire Empire. A few minutes later, Naruto arrived before the military academy, the place he wanted to go to when he had the dream of becoming an Elemental Knight but could not do so. The military academy was a big, red building that had 3 separate wings and covered at least 4 acres of land for each wing. The main building was where the administration offices were located. Classrooms were located on the east wing. The East Wing had a large number of classes, each of them to teach students strategy, weapons, tactics, stances, and a large number of military theories. The West Wing consisted of several weapon storages, 2 blacksmiths' quarters and a large field that was divided into 15 separate parts. Students could request for one of the training fields to be used as practice or to spar with others. Basically, the military academy of the Fire Empire was fitted with all the necessary requirements to train the best of the best soldiers and elemental knights of the Fire Empire. Naruto took a deep breath of air into his lungs and whispered to himself, "All right, this is it, Naruto. Let's get this over with." Inside the military academy, Naruto had to ask a couple of people as to where the registration was, with several others pointing him in the wrong direction. Finally, after several minutes, Naruto finally spotted a room with the sign that said, "EK registration." With a deep breath, Naruto knocked on the door and entered the small room. Is this the registration room for the Elemental Knight's exam?" Naruto inquired. Inside the small room was a table with a stack of papers on the side of the table. There was a man with purple hair that was medium long, touching his shoulders. The man was well built and wore the standard attire for a soldier of the Fire Empire, which consisted of a dark gray vest with a chain vest and black leggings. "That's what the door says, right?" The man responded sarcastically. "All right." Naruto entered the room and took a sheet of paper, which read, "Elemental Knight Registration Form." Naruto read the name tag that was on the man's shirt and smiled, "Thanks, Mizuku." The man, Mizuki, narrowed his eyes in disgust. "That's Mizuki-sensei, brat." "Oh right. Naruto read through the form, then pointed at the paper. "I just write this all up, and I get to take the exams?" Mizuki shrugged and Naruto took it as a yes, borrowing one of the pens he spotted on the table and began scribbling whatever the form requested to have filled. Meanwhile, Mizuki was wondering how come, as a teacher of the military academy, he had never seen Naruto before. He had never seen the boy in a class, training, or just passing by in the hallway. After Naruto had apparently finished writing and handed it to Mizuki, the purple-haired soldier enthusiastically took it and quickly read what Naruto had written. "Uzumaki." "Naruto, huh?" Mizuki said, looking at the blonde. "You're not related to Uzumaki Kushina, are you?" "Who?" "Never mind." Mizuki shook his head, realizing the foolishness of it. "Anyway, I don't think I recall ever seeing you attending any of the classes." "Who was your teacher? Who was in charge of your classes?" Naruto scratched the back of his head, laughing nervously. I'm not a student here." "What?" "I'm not a student here," Naruto repeated. "I never attended the military academy because I couldn't afford it, but I still want to become an elemental knight. It says that anyone can try to become one, so I thought dash." Mizuki laughed at Naruto at this point, interrupting the boy. "Oh, you think you actually have a chance to become an elemental knight? Oh, this must be one sick joke. I mean, if a has studied for the past 9 years to become a soldier and only has about 10% chance of becoming an elemental knight, what makes you think that you, a guy who has never learnt the basics, can become an elemental knight? It's been my dream ever since I saw them." Naruto retorted, "I know I never attended the academy. I know that I'm probably the worst among the rest, but I still want a chance to prove myself. And I'm not going to give up until I get a chance. Believe it." Mizuki sighed, shaking his head. Listen, kid. I'm just going to be frank with you. I'm not going to submit this form. You aren't going to take the exams. You don't stand a chance. The exams are harsh, your life could even be in danger. So whatever you say, I'm not going to let you take the exams. Now get lost, kid, go get a job or something. You don't suit the life of a soldier. Besides, Mizuki continued, look at you, you'd be a pathetic little fool trying to join the army. You look like the type of person who'd flee at the sight of the enemy. How did your parents even raise you? Mizuki laughed. Naruto, however, held his temper. I'm an orphan. Oh, that makes it even worse. Orphans like you bring nothing but trouble, and you want to join the elemental knights so that you can get an easy life, right? You guys should just piss off. I want my chance. Naruto roared, slamming both fists on the table. It's been my dream for the past 8 years. Don't judge me just because I'm not a student of this stupid place, alright? Not everyone needs to learn stuff from the classroom to become something. Mizuki glared at Naruto, who simply stared at him back, the two looking at each other in the eye as if in a staring contest. Naruto was not going to back down, and Mizuki was honestly pissed that the boy showed no respect towards him as a soldier. These civilians sometimes needed to be taught the harsh reality. Yes, Mizuki was going to give Naruto a harsh reminder that he was nothing more but a spoiled, good-for-nothing civilian, so he was going to make sure Naruto remembered that. Alright, you want to take the test? I'll give you one. Mizuki said, waiting for Naruto to take the bait, which he did all too easily. Alright. Heh, you got determination, kid, I'll give you that, Mizuki said with a grin. Now, what you need to do is simple. You just need to challenge a guy known as the White Fang Uchiha, and if you beat him, you can become an elemental knight. Naruto blinked a couple of times. I've heard of that name. Isn't he some sort of hero of Konoha? Well, hero's a little too much, but he is one of the strongest elemental knights in the Fire Empire. So, if you can beat him in a little spar, I'll recommend to the higher-ups to actually make you an elemental knight. Do you even have that authority? Mizuki scoffed. Hey, they chose me to be in charge of the registration forms, didn't they? That means they trust my instinct. But, if you're scared, well. I never said I'm scared. Naruto interjected, I just need to make sure, and that's all. Mizuki smirked at Naruto, the blonde not willing to step down. This was what Mizuki wanted, so with the wicked plan already laid out, Mizuki decided to go through with it. So, where do I find this guy? Naruto asked. Well, he's normally found on one of the many rooftops of Konoha. But, if you're lucky, he should be out shopping for one of his favorite books, so I'd suggest the bookstore just nearby here actually. Mizuki answered. And what does he look like? He sports the usual elemental knight uniform, the standard dark purple outfit with a shoulder pad on the left. He has white hair and he covers his left eye due to an injury. Naruto gave a thumb up. Alright, just you watch. I'm gonna find this guy and beat him to a pulp. Then, you'll let me join the elemental knights, right? Mizuki nodded and Naruto quickly ran out of the room, leaving the purple-haired soldier chuckling as to what was about to happen. Finally, he decided he simply needed to witness the spectacle and walked out of the room, placing a sign that wrote, out for lunch, even though lunch hours had passed. Bookstore. Hatake Kakashi was grinning under his mask like a little schoolgirl, taking the book he wanted from the shelf and moving to the counter. He was an adult, so he was not ashamed about buying such books. Besides, he was single, so he needed some sort of stress reliever, and there was no way he was going to let those eyeing him change his mind. However, some of his friends said that if he just took off his mask, he would find that a large number of girls would go after him. That was what he was afraid of. He never liked those annoying fangirls, so he had been successfully avoiding them for a long time this way. It was much more convenient this way. Kakashi paid no attention to a blonde boy staring at him outside the window, handing the cashier the cash needed to buy the book. After his prized, erotic book was put in a plastic bag, Kakashi thanked the cashier and walked out of the shop, and then the boy approached him. "Are you White Fang Uchiha?" Naruto asked. Kakashi raised his lazy in surprise. I don't really prefer to be referred to with that name in Konoha, but yes, I am. Alright. Naruto exclaimed in excitement, I need to fight you. Excuse me? I need to fight you. Naruto emphasized, that way, I can become an elemental knight. Become an elemental knight? Kakashi sputtered in confusion, Kid, what are you talking about? The guy in charge of registering me for the elemental knight's exam said I need to beat you, and then he'll let me pass. Naruto explained, going into a fighting stance, so, let's go. Huh. Since when did they have exams like that? Just hurry up and fight me. I need to pass this exam. Kakashi sighed, losing interest in the conversation. Listen kid, I don't have time for this. I want to get back home and read my book, alright? Maybe some other time. Come on, I just need one chance to beat you. Naruto said, trying to grab Kakashi's arm to catch his attention. However, that was Naruto's mistake. No one touched Kakashi's prized possession, and in retaliation, Kakashi stepped back and delivered a fist at Naruto's gut, throwing all the air out of Naruto's lungs. Naruto gasped in pain, dropping to his knees and clutching his stomach. Kakashi used half of his strength in that punch, but it would have been more than enough to knock out a cadet. Honestly, Kakashi had better things to do than to entertain some brat about becoming an elemental knight. For now, he wanted to read his book and the boy was just wasting his time, walking away. Wait. I'm not done yet. Naruto grunted. Kakashi was one of the most powerful elemental knights and he was rarely taken by surprise. However, Kakashi shocked at this point, turning back to see Naruto slowly getting back to his feet, wheezing for air but still conscious. Impossible, Kakashi thought, that blow should have knocked him out. Naruto shook his head, a set of determined eyes staring at Kakashi. It's not over until I beat you. You've got passion kid, I'll give you that, Kakashi praised, placing his prized book on the ground, so I'll spar with you right here, right now. But before I beat you, tell me your name. You, Uzumaki. Nar, Naruto. Naruto replied, still finding it difficult to breathe. Naruto, Kakashi nodded, if you're serious that you need to beat me to become an elemental knight, then I'll fight you. But I'm not going to give you any chance. Naruto nodded and Kakashi got into his own stance, clenching his fists. So, you're ready? Naruto gave another nod, but that was it. Kakashi had dashed instantly in front of Naruto, delivering a punch straight into Naruto's face, breaking his nose. Naruto grunted in pain but ignored the pain, throwing a random punch which Kakashi easily dodged. The White Fang allowed Naruto to attack, but Naruto's attacks were too easy to read. Not even making any effort to avoid the blows. Naruto's vision was getting blur with each strike he threw, the two attacks from Kakashi earlier already too much on the young blonde. He already could not concentrate on the fight, but he was doing so on pure determination. A small crowd had gathered around the two at this point, some of them from the bookstore earlier when they noticed the boy challenging Kakashi. Kakashi's reputation as the White Fang Uchiha was well known by many, so to see some unknown guy challenging him was a rare sight to behold. But they were already getting disappointed by the blonde's poor fighting skills. This kid's bad, Kakashi thought, his attacks show neither pattern nor any sort of training. He is just randomly throwing punches left and right. But, he should have already lost from the two blows I gave him earlier, but still standing up only from determination. That's something honorable to have, but... Kakashi dodged a punch and then charged his right fist, gathering a small amount of lightning into his fist and then delivered an uppercut on Naruto's chin, throwing the boy into the air. The blow added with lightning affinity was going to be more than enough to deal with Naruto. But it's not enough to let you become an elemental knight. Kakashi said, finishing his thought. Naruto landed hard on the ground after being taken off his feet 6 feet into the air. Naruto groaned in pain, blood pouring out of his broken nose and from the corner of his lips. However, Kakashi was once more surprised that Naruto was still awake, trying to get up, but his body could not handle what his heart desired. Kakashi walked to the boy, kneeling down and patting the boy's face. Listen, kid. You've got the will, I'll give you that. But that's not going to be enough to let you become one of us, alright? I still can. Naruto struggled, coughing out blood. No, Naruto, you can't, Kakashi said forcefully. I'll be frank, Naruto. You have no talent to become an elemental knight. Your fighting stance was poor, you probably never had proper training, am I right? Naruto's silence gave Kakashi the answer, so that means you were never part of the military academy. Even so, even with training, I doubt you'd have the necessary skills to join the elemental knights. I'm sorry, kid, but the most you can do is join the regular army. You cannot join the elemental knights, not with that poor amount of skill. No. Naruto protested, blood still flowing from his broken nose. I've dreamt of becoming an elemental knight. Reality is cruel, Naruto, Kakashi said gently. You might think becoming an elemental knight is just living the life. People adore you, people respect you, but you pay a big price for that. I've lost a lot of my friends, my loved ones, and I will probably lose others as well in my life. Kakashi stood up, staring down at Naruto. You see these people here? Kakashi gestured and Naruto looked around him. The people still watching them. Can you swear upon your life that you can protect them? No, don't answer that. I know you can, I've already seen that. But, with your skills, you're just going to be throwing your life for no reason. You're too weak, Naruto. So I'll tell you one last time, Naruto, give up your dream. With that, Kakashi gave one last nod to Naruto and walked away, picking up his book that he left on the side of the road earlier. The people all watching the fight soon dispersed, whispering with one another. Naruto was still on the ground, clutching his bloody nose and slowly getting back to his feet. Naruto was angered, not at the words that Kakashi had thrown at him, but at the fact that he was so weak. He cursed his luck but was removed from his misery when he was suddenly shoved to the ground, Naruto landing hard on his back. Arg! What's the big idea? Naruto demanded, clutching his nose. So Naruto. A deal's a deal, right? Mizuki taunted. Mizuki. You lost, fair and square. So, that means I don't have to recommend you to become an elemental knight. Then again, I never had a doubt that you could beat the white Fang Uchiha anyway. Naruto growled, clenching his teeth in anger. You don't have what it takes to be an elemental knight, kid, Mizuki stated. You're just nothing but a stupid, little orphan that doesn't know his place. Well, I hope that the beating you got will be a grim reminder to you, that you will never amount to anything in this world. Naruto had enough and lunged towards Mizuki, but the purple-haired soldier had more experience, reacting fast and kicking Naruto in the gut, throwing Naruto backwards and coughing out more blood. Naruto groaned in pain, his teeth stained in red from the blood. Just stay away from the military life, kid, Mizuki advised. I'm telling you this for your own good. Then, Mizuki spat on the ground and walked away, leaving the blonde orphan on the dirty ground. Naruto, however, was shaking his head, glaring at the back of Mizuki. This was just the beginning of his journey, and all journeys had their bad starts. Yes, Naruto was simply more determined now. There's no way in hell I'm giving up. Naruto said, not by a long shot. I'm going to become an elemental knight. Because I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Believe it. 3 pork ramen guys, on the double. Tucci barked when he entered the kitchen. Kawato responded enthusiastically, on it. Naruto merely obeyed the old man's orders, grabbing some of the flour and preparing to create the most important part of ramen, the noodles. Tucci was in charge of setting up the ingredients while Kawato was given the role to prepare the broth. Naruto still had a couple of bandages wrapped on his face from the beating he received from Kakashi 2 days ago. Although the White Fang Uchiha fought him seriously, Kakashi had not even used half of his strength or skills. It simply showed the big gap difference between a commoner who had no military training to one of the most renowned elemental knight of the Fire Empire. It was lunch hour now, so it was a period when the ramen restaurant would be the busiest. Naruto and Kawato had been working non-stop for the past hour, receiving orders after orders on a ramen meal. Ayam was busy as well, having to cater to each of the patrons, writing down their orders and then moving quickly to the next. "You okay, Naruto?" Kawato asked, referring to Naruto's bandages. Naruto returned a grin. "Don't worry about me, Kawato. The only thing that's been hurt is my pride. I'm not giving up yet though. I'm going to become an elemental knight, believe it." "Well, I'm just glad you're not hurt." "Well, not hurt too badly anyway." Alright. Let's just focus on making our ramen," Naruto reminded, concentrating on the noodles, "or else, the old man's going to murder us." "I can hear you, you know," Tucci remarked, causing all three to share a small laugh shared among them. After preparing for another 30 or so ramens, the storm finally passed and lunch hour was basically over. After making sure the kitchen was clean enough, the two young boys went out of the kitchen and lounged around the dining area, taking a much-needed break. Naruto sighed in relief. Man, that old man Tucci should really hire another helping hand in the kitchen. It's almost impossible to keep up with the demand here. "Not so loud," Kawato said, hushing the blonde. "You know he don't like it when you call him old man." Naruto chuckled, giving a nudge on his friend. "Aw man, you need to lighten up. We've been working our ass off for the last 3 years with him, he won't mind. Besides, I've been calling him old man for as long as I remember. It's normal for him now." "I know, but dash. It's alright Kawato," Tucci said, making his appearance from the kitchen. "Although I'm strict, the two of you are almost like my own family now. I've known Naruto ever since he started coming here since he was 7 years old, ordering ramen almost every day. I'm used to him calling me an old man." "Seriously though, you really should hire someone else," Naruto stated. "I mean, we're just dying in the kitchen at rush hour. TCH, you young kids are so god-ed lazy. I managed the place all on my own and look how far I got in my life. You need to work hard if you want to reach somewhere in life." Tucci scolded. Naruto rolled his eyes. "You only had a ramen stall at the time, it wasn't that bad." Fine. I'll think about hiring a help or two, but until then, you guys still need to give your best, understand?" Kawato and Naruto merely gave a nod and the discussion ended there. Tucci and Ayam were conversing with each other and Kawato got up from the seat and returned to the kitchen, probably to check on the broth or something. Naruto sighed and lay down on the table, trying to grab a quick nap. However, Naruto's nap was short-lived when he heard the chinking sound of the doorbell, the restaurant's door opening. Naruto sighed and quickly got up from his seat and prepared to return to the kitchen. There were altogether at least 8 people entering the restaurant, all of them young, around Naruto's age. They were all chatting amongst themselves, happy smiles on their faces. There were altogether about 6 guys with 3 females, all of the 3 young women beautiful in their own way. They all picked a table and continued talking, the empty restaurant becoming lively once more. Naruto thought nothing of them and headed into the kitchen when his ears picked up an interesting line. "Man," one of the guy, a chubby man said in an excited tone, "I can't wait until we take the elemental night examinations. I can't believe all of you are in it as well." "Calm down Chuji," another replied, shaking his head lazily, "you always speak loudly. Just talk normally, we all can hear you." The overweight guy, known as Chuji, merely laughed it off, but Naruto had already heard what he needed to hear. Whoa, these guys are taking the elemental night exams? Naruto thought, amazed. I need to talk with them. At the same time, Ayam also realized she had a job to do and was making her way to take the orders of the customers. Naruto quickly stopped her, actually almost running over the girl, causing the girl to yelp in surprise. Naruto dash. I'll take their orders. Naruto exclaimed, Ayam-chan, you, You can go and help Kawato and the old man in the kitchen. Naruto. What are you planning this time? Ayam questioned, you are the one who should be in the kitchen. Please see. Those guys are. They are like from the military academy and I really want to ask them some questions. You're not supposed to bother the customers. Ayam chastised but Naruto was adamant. Oh, come on, please. I'll wash the dishes for a week, alright? How's that? Naruto bargained, knowing the deal was too sweet for Ayam to back down. Ayam knew better than to submit to Naruto's wishes, but Naruto was rarely this desperate. Also, those guys were related somehow to Naruto's dream, and while he probably learned his lesson from the brutal beating he got, it was still his dream. And she wanted to support him in any way she could. Finally, against her better judgment, Ayam relented, alright, fine. Now get going, they've been waiting for a minute now. Go. Naruto cheered and quickly grabbed a pen and paper and went to the tables that the 8 graduates were at. Ayam shook her head and entered the kitchen to help out. The 8 customers had grouped up 2 tables into one so that it was more convenient for them. TSCH, took you long enough. A raven dark-haired boy remarked without looking up from the menu. Naruto scratched his head in embarrassment, I'm sorry for the delay. So, what will you guys have? Each one of them gave out their respective orders with Naruto scribbling them down on the small piece of paper. The guy known as Chuji, he ordered at least 5 bowls for himself, impressing Naruto, who could also chow down the same amount of ramen. Naruto gave a bow and then entered the kitchen, handing the order to Ayam, and he returned to the dining area. Now, Naruto got a proper look at each one of them. The guy known as Chuji had orange hair and despite looking overweight, was built like an ox. Out of everyone, he was the most buff among them, with muscles on his arms and packing through his clothes. Next to Chuji was a guy with a spiky ponytail, and from how he conversed with Chuji, Naruto guessed that the two were close friends as well. However, Naruto did not know why, but the spiky ponytail guy seemed to have little interest in being here, sporting a bored expression on his face. Then there was a boy with brown hair speaking with his partner, a guy with black spiky and wearing shades. The boy was quite loud as well and had an aura of being a bit on the wild side, whereas the black-haired boy was much more calm and well-mannered. And finally there was the raven-haired boy. Naruto had to admit, the boy was viciously good-looking with an attitude of being cool, although Naruto felt it was more towards arrogance. For now, Naruto decided to listen in before he introduced himself. Man, what a bother. The spiky brown-haired boy grumbled, I thought I'd finally be free from you guys, but then, you guys are also taking the Elemental Knight's exam. It's like you guys are trying to follow me to the end. Don't be so full of yourself, Kiba, the calm, black-haired boy remarked, you know we all were going to be taking part of the exams. The brown-haired boy, Kiba sighed, I'm just making a joke, Shino. Seriously, you take things too seriously sometimes. Kiba-kun. Shino-kun, let's not, get into another argument, please, we're in PU public, after all. The raven-haired girl pleaded. Wow, she's a beauty all right. Naruto thought in his mind, watching the girl. The raven-haired girl was definitely a beautiful girl, possessing white eyes and a very generous bust size. As a matter of fact, Naruto realized that the girl's chest was the biggest among the 3 girls present. She had a feeling of elegance on her, and from her manner of speech, gentleness as well. Typical, the raven boy said with a smirk, you need a girl to keep you guys in line. TSCH, have some self-respect. Kiba growled, why you? Man, this is so troublesome. The ponytailed boy sighed. The group shared another laugh, although Kiba was still visibly pissed at the raven boy. Naruto also did not like the guy, just from looking at him. Naruto continued watching them, and his sights soon landed on the two remaining females of the group. The pink-haired girl was pretty in her own right, and although she had less in the chest department, Naruto recalled that she had a very attractive figure with long, slender legs. Her green, emerald eyes were also another part of her attractive traits, and Naruto would definitely consider her as a top 10 kind of girl. And the last among them was a girl with very long blonde hair with blue eyes, exactly like Naruto, but her hair was much lighter in color than Naruto's. She tied it into a ponytail, but it seems that the length of her hair reached down to her waist. She had a moderate build, with a nice waist-to-hip ratio. All in all, the three girls were definitely attractive. The sound of ding echoed from the kitchen and Naruto rushed into the back, seeing some of the ramen were ready. Naruto picked up a tray and placed 4 of the bowls on it and then delivered the hot, steaming bowls to them. "Hey, thanks man," Kiba said, picking up his chopsticks and quickly shoving down noodles down his throat. "So," Naruto began, "you guys are all graduates from the military academy, right?" Chuji nodded with a smile, "Yeah, we are." "Wait, are you also from the academy? I don't remember seeing you there." By then, everyone was looking at Naruto. The blonde chuckled nervously, No. I never attended the academy actually, although I wanted to. But, well, I just couldn't at the time." "So, is there a reason why you wanted to speak with us?" the pink-haired girl asked. "Well, I heard that you guys are all going to take the elemental night exam." Everyone was now at full attention, glaring at Naruto. The glare was not really threatening, but more of a question, as if to see whether Naruto was joking or not. Naruto remained silent, not knowing what else to say when he heard another ding coming from the kitchen. Naruto excused himself and headed for the kitchen to grab the other meals. Naruto delivered the respective ramen meals to each of their orders. Then, the blonde girl spoke, "So why do you want to know if we are taking the elemental night exam?" I also want to take the exams," Naruto replied. All of them stared at Naruto. Kiba raised his eyebrow, as if saying, "Are you joking?" and pink-haired girl along with the blonde-haired girl snickered at the remark. Naruto was now growing flustered and also angered from their disrespect. "What's your name?" "I'm Nara Shikamaru," the ponytailed boy said, introducing himself. "I'm Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto." Once again, the group had looks of surprise and Shikamaru gave a nod, "Naruto. Uzumaki. Naruto, eh." Naruto saw the look of interest from everyone, especially Shikamaru. It was almost the same kind of look Mizuki gave him when Naruto mentioned his name. "So, let me get this straight Naruto," Shikamaru said, "you say you also want to take the Elemental Knight's exam?" Naruto nodded, so Shikamaru continued, "And you've never attended the military academy of Konoha?" Another nod from Naruto. "Naruto. Why do you want to become an Elemental Knight?" It's been my dream. I saw the ascending when I was a kid and I want to try and make something for myself," Naruto answered. "Naruto," Shikamaru said softly, "you know the odds are heavily against you, right? The Elemental Knights are the elite forces of Konoha, and only very few can actually make it in. Even those who have trained and studied in the military academy have an 85% chance of failing the exams. Besides, normally you need to be able to call out an element to have a better chance to enter the Elemental Knight ranks. Only a few who cannot use an element but still enter the Elemental Knights is Madogai and Rock Lee. Can you use an element, Naruto?" Naruto swallowed nervously and shook his head. "I don't know, I never really tried and..." "Pfft, just let him try the exams, Shikamaru," the raven-haired boy declared with a smirk, "then he'll understand why a commoner can't enter the exams." Everyone turned to the raven-haired boy, who just shrugged his shoulders. He obviously thinks this whole thing is just a game. Well, once he learns the hard way, he'll give up his so-called dream and just continue to be a ramen worker. Sasuke. Chuji growled in anger, don't you treat people with respect? Naruto has feelings as well, and it's his dream. Let him try until he can someday achieve it. Sasuke glared at Chuji, an arrogant look in his eyes. I guess losers will always try and help one another. That's the only way you guys can try and become like us elites. Before Chuji could do or say anything, Sasuke got up from his seat, then without even touching the ramen, walked out of the restaurant. Naruto kept his temper in check. The arrogance was one thing, but the lack of respect Sasuke threw was simply too much. Without even missing a beat, both girls got up from seat as well, chasing after Sasuke. Sasuke-kun. The pink and blonde girl called after, running out of the restaurant. That asshole. Chuji hissed in anger, just because he's the best. He thinks he can just spit on another person's dream? Him to hell. Calm down Chuji, Shikamaru said, that's just how he is and we can't do anything about it. You remember what he did to you when you threw your tongue at him like that. It's good enough he's not doing it again. Everyone then ate in silence, the cheerfulness from earlier gone. Naruto felt bad about this, but Chuji gave a smile of encouragement but said nothing else. Naruto returned the smile, but he was feeling rotten to the core now. After the group finished their meal and paid for them, they left. Only Chuji and Shikamaru remained for a moment. Listen, Naruto started, I know you guys are going to try and stop me, but I'm not going to change my mind. I failed the exams once, but I'm going to try again. Shikamaru looked confused now. What? You took the exams before? That's impossible, you are only allowed to take the exams once. Also, the exams are starting next week, so you couldn't have taken the exams. Naruto blinked a couple of times. Wait, what? I thought the exam was to challenge the white fan Uchiha and try to beat him. That's the exam, right? Shikamaru and Chuji looked at one another, and then at Naruto. And then, the two of them started laughing, leaving the blonde boy even more confused than ever. Soon, the two boys were slowly recovering from their laughter, wiping tears away from the eyes. Wait, you're telling me that you actually fought the white fan Uchiha, thinking that if you can beat him, you become an elemental knight? Chuji remarked. Well, that Mizuki guy told me dash. Well, he's wrong, Shikamaru interjected, Mizuki-sensei. I know him, he's always been an asshole to us. Not a lot of us like him, and I'll bring this matter up with the higher-ups. So, that wasn't the exam? Naruto demanded, shaking with anticipation. No, it's not, Shikamaru responded, the exams comprise of a couple of challenges that we have to complete. We're not sure as well, but definitely not fighting the white fan Uchiha. In any case, I'll help you register for the exams, Naruto. You can do that? Of course I can, Shikamaru said with a smirk, I'm from the famed Nara clan and Chuji of the Akimichi. Our parents are elemental knights, and so they have some influence in the Fire Empire. Of course, that doesn't mean we're bad. We trained hard for this and we're going to pass the exam as well. Naruto was too excited at this point, finally realizing that his dream could still be possible. He could not wait to tell Kawato, Old Man Tuchi and Ayam about the news. They were still busy cleaning up in the kitchen, so Naruto did not have a chance to speak with them. But Naruto, are you sure you want to take the Elemental Knight's exam? Once you take it, you'll be putting your life on the line. Especially for you, since you have no military training at all. Shikamaru warned. And the only reason we're helping you is because you say it's your dream, Chuji added in, my father always told me to help others achieve their dream, and the way you expressed your dream. I just knew you were serious in it. But, are you sure this is the path you wished to take? Naruto said nothing, just staring at the two military graduates for a couple of seconds. He remembered when he first saw the elemental knights participating in the ascending, and how he gained the dream of wanting to becoming like what he saw. His dream had never changed, and nothing was going to stop him from trying to get what he wanted. I'm going to become an elemental knight, Naruto said, so, I'm going to ace this exam. Believe it. Chuji and Shikamaru gave a nod of encouragement, and with a smile to their new friend, promised Naruto that they would register Naruto for the exams. Naruto returned back to the kitchen while Chuji and Shikamaru left the ramen restaurant. Hey Shikamaru, Chuji called out, why did you want to help him so much? I mean, I'm glad you did because I wanted to help him as well, but I thought you might think of this as too troublesome. I know Chuji, Shikamaru replied, but when he told me his name, I feel that he just might have the potential to become an elemental knight. Chuji cocked his head to the side in confusion. His name. Doesn't Uzumaki ring a bell? Chuji thought for a moment, then he struck gold. You mean Uzumaki Kushina-sama? You think he might have some relations to her? I don't know really, Shikamaru said, shaking his head, but, if he is, it just might bring Konoha an edge in this war. After all, Kushina-sama was one of the wielders of the 9 legendary weapons, the Sword of Kyubi. If Naruto can also use that sword, he'll be the hero that Konoha has been waiting for. I see. Chuji nodded in understanding now, so that's why you want him to become an elemental knight. Shikamaru nodded, it's just a wild toss in the ocean, but who knows? His name is an Uzumaki. If he can hold the Sword of Kyubi, just like Kushina-sama. Ha! Shikamaru merely smiled as he rushed to the military academy to help the registration of Uzumaki Naruto for the Elemental Knight examinations. Arc, Elemental Knight's Exam. A week had passed since Shikamaru and Chuji helped to register Naruto to partake in the Elemental Knight's examination. Finally, the day had finally come and the day for the Elemental Knight's exam was today. Naruto was already up and early, excited and also nervous at the same time. Tucci honestly preferred Naruto gave up his dream, not just because he wanted Naruto to help him in running the restaurant but because Tucci cared for the boy. He did not want Naruto to foolishly throw his life in the army, but he was willing to respect the boy's wishes. Naruto was busy in the kitchen, preparing the broth and doing whatever he could before he left for the exams. This was the day he had been waiting for all his life, ever since he decided on his dream on becoming an elemental knight after witnessing the ascending 8 years ago. Today was that day. I see you're up earlier than usual. A voice spoke from the kitchen doorway. Naruto grinned, not needing to even face the person to recognize the voice. Well, I need to head out early. I want to make sure I've got everything I need. Kawato shook his head, so, there's nothing we can say to change your mind. When Naruto merely shook his head, Kawato added, even if it might break your face like when the White Fang Uchiha did a week ago? Hey, that was not part of the exams. That bastard Mizuki tricked me, so that doesn't count. Naruto retorted. It still doesn't change the fact that you got beaten by a legendary elemental knight. I can't believe you didn't know who he was. Almost everyone, even outside of the Fire Empire, knows of Hatake Kakashi, the great White Fang Uchiha of the Fire Empire. Ugh, whatever. Just you wait though, when I'm an elemental knight, I'll show that one-eyed guy who's the better one. Kawato laughed heartily and approached the kitchen counter, gathering some flour to prepare the noodles. Naruto finished the final touches on the broth, made sure the taste was exquisite and then departed. As Naruto passed Kawato, his childhood friend stopped him, grabbing Naruto's shoulder. Naruto. Good luck in the exams, alright? Make sure you pass it, alright? Kawato expressed thoughtfully. Naruto blinked once and then gave a confident grin with a thumb up before he ran out of the kitchen. Tucci and Ayam were probably on the way to open the restaurant and Naruto was hoping to not run into them, at least now yet. He wanted to pass the exams first, at least then he could proudly tell Tucci that he passed. Naruto's destination was the Hokage's tower, and as the name suggests, the building was where the Hokage resides. However, it holds other functions such as administration, council meetings and several other departments responsible for the running of the Fire Empire. Basically, the Hokage Tower was an important structure and was located in the heart of Konoha, in the center of the capital. The Hokage Tower was a large building decorated red in color and was shaped as a circle. The building consisted of at least 5 stories, with the ground floor up to the 4th floor belonging to the administration. On the top floor was the Hokage's office and his residence, with several rooms reserved for meeting rooms. Since the Elemental Knights were the most powerful and prestigious unit of the Fire Empire, candidates were told to report at the Hokage Tower instead of the military academy. Shikamaru and Chuji had told Naruto that they would be meeting with Naruto at the entrance of the Hokage Tower before they proceeded, to make sure Naruto knew where to go. I wonder why they're so nice, Naruto pondered, not that I'm complaining, but they're actually going out of their way just to help some guy. Heh, well whatever, I'll show them, especially that cocky duck-haired bastard. A couple of minutes later, Naruto finally arrived before the Hokage Tower. In all his life, Naruto had never really been to the Hokage Tower. There was basically no need for him venture into the Hokage Tower as it had nothing to do with him being an orphan. Naruto knew that Tsuchi sometimes went there though, something to do with reporting the restaurant's annual goings to the Department of Development. Yo Naruto! Over here! A voice called out. Naruto found Shikamaru waving at him at the entrance alongside Chuji. Hey guys! As Naruto approached the duo, Naruto realized they were not alone. Among them were the familiar faces of the ones that had dined at the ramen restaurant, including the raven-haired guy. If Naruto remembered right, the guy's name was Sasuke and the guy had the 2 girls again, the pink-haired girl along with the blonde. Both were stunning and beautiful in their own right, and for a moment, Naruto was jealous, but he quickly got over it. You're ready for this, Naruto? Chuji asked with a warm smile. You can back out if you want to. Are you kidding? This has been my dream. Nothing's going to stop me from becoming an elemental knight, believe it. Humph, I see I was right, losers will always try to help another loser to drag each other down. The raven-haired boy mocked. Naruto glared at the boy, the black-haired boy's eyes filled with arrogance. In all of Naruto's life, he had never thought he would meet another person with such an attitude. The world truly was a huge place, with many people with different personalities. Sensing that Naruto was upset, Chuji stepped in. Sasuke, just keep your words to yourself, alright? Sasuke merely scoffed at the remark by the Akimichi, but said nothing more. Chuji sighed and then turned to Naruto. Anyway, we're all friends from the military academy. Come, I'll introduce you to everyone. Chuji, we don't have time for introductions right now. We need to get going. Shikamaru reminded. Oh alright, I'll just tell Naruto their names at least. Shikamaru sighed but said nothing, signifying that it was okay. Chuji pointed to the boy sporting a sort of fur coat with red markings on his cheek. That guy over there's Inuzuka Kiba from the famed Inuzuka clan. I'm sure you know, the Inuzuka family is one of the best riders of the Fire Empire, and in the world. It's thanks to them that the cavalry forces of Konoha are one of the best. Naruto nodded, watching Kiba conversing with a guy wearing sunglasses. Chuji continued, the guy next to him is Aburame Shino. Oh, don't mind him if you think he's being a little antisocial. He's just a little, well, he's just how he is. And yes, he's from the Aburame clan, specialized in infiltration and scouting of Konoha's military. Aburame Shino indeed looked a little weird in Naruto's eyes. The boy was tall and wore a sea-green jacket and a high upturned collar, hiding his lips from view. The boy had his hands in his pockets as he conversed with Kiba with what looked like a serious expression, although Kiba was speaking in a jovial manner. The girl next to those two is Hyuga Hinata, Chuji explained. She's quite a shy girl despite coming from such a prestigious clan, but she's really nice though once you get her to come out of her shell. Also, you shouldn't underestimate her, she's really smart, and from some of the small spars we had during the academy days, she's good in combat as well. Well, she is from the Hyuga clan after all, which specializes in all forms of hand-to-hand combat. Naruto did not need Chuji to point it out. Hinata was indeed a beautiful girl. Her long, silky hair and her white eyes were what drew Naruto to her. Then, as a guy, Naruto of course noticed that Hinata was extremely gifted in the chest region, adding much more to her appeal. Even more, Naruto noticed that Hinata was staring back at him, and when she noticed it, she immediately looked away, blushing madly like a tomato. Huh, she's really shy. Naruto thought to himself. As for the blonde girl, she's Yamanaka Ino and, as you can see, she's one of the many fangirls of Sasuke. If she wasn't a childhood friend, I'd have a much different opinion of her. Chuji remarked, shaking his head at Ino's actions in trying to win Sasuke's attention. Naruto pointed to the other girl, and who's that? That girl's Haruno Sakura, another of Sasuke's fangirl. But, she's one of the smartest girls in class though. While she lacks in physical power, she makes up with it with her brains and is one of the best in tactics and strategy. If it comes down to it, she's the only one that can probably rival Shikamaru. Shikamaru shrugged at this. Tch, girls are so troublesome. With the names at least given to Naruto, the blonde orphan took a moment to watch everyone. They all did hold an aura of warmth and trust with each other. Even though some had weird or distasteful personality. However, they had known each other since the military academy days, so they had bonded over time. Naruto, however, was nothing but an outsider, and he needed to become an elemental knight to actually be among them. Then, a figure emerged from the entrance of the Hokage Tower, sporting the elemental knight attire. He wore the standard shoulder pad on his left shoulder and a purple sleeveless outfit with baggy pants, purple as well. The man was smoking a lighted cigarette, smoke floating into the air, and black hair with a black beard. Alright, you maggots, you guys are the ones who want to take part in the Elemental Knight's trial? The man boomed, then get your asses in here and follow me. Immediately, everyone fell in order and formed a line at full attention. Naruto quickly followed Shikamaru, standing behind the Nara prodigy as they lined up. Chuji was behind Naruto and began walking as Asuma led the group into the Hokage Tower. Wow, that's Sarutobi Asuma, Chuji pointed out. He's the third Hokage's son, and is considered one of the best elemental knights of the Fire Empire. Naruto looked at the rough man, then whispered to Chuji, this guy? He sure looks like, well, he doesn't look the part. Chuji chuckled, that's true, but don't let appearance fool you, Naruto. Asuma is considered one of the best duelists in the Fire Empire, and possesses the most offensive element in the world, the wind element. I can't believe that he's the one to lead us. It's a huge honor. Naruto chuckled nervously and realized he knew very little of the elemental knights. Sure, he said that it was his dream, but if he really wanted to become one, Naruto realized he had better ask Kawato for some extra information, since Kawato was also a fan of the elemental knights. Naruto was too embarrassed to ask Shikamaru or Chuji about this. The interior of the Hokage Tower was magnificent, the walls doused yellow in color with beautiful markings on the walls. There were several symbols of the Fire Empire posted on the walls as well, and the administration section was filled with people committing to their jobs. And when the clerks and office staff spotted Asuma approaching, they all gave a bow or nod of acknowledgement, with Asuma returning the gesture. I hope you won't make a fool out of us, newcomer, Sasuke said, turning to glare at Naruto. At this point, Naruto could not hold back his temper. Hey, you got a problem, duckhair? You think you're something just because you're the top of the class? Ino and Sakura were pointing daggers at Naruto with their eyes, and Sasuke smirked with a look of surprise, a little fire from the dobe. Heh, but I am serious in that. Don't you dare embarrass us, because we've been training for our whole life and now some commoner wants to try his luck. Wait, I thought the exams are individual tests. Naruto questioned. Sasuke shook his head in laughter and then looked ahead. Chuji then whispered in, it is individual tests, Naruto. But Sasuke has a huge ego and he wants to impress the seniors as a whole. We've all been training for this, but don't let him get to you, Naruto. You just do the best you can, alright? Chuji gave a pat of encouragement on Naruto's shoulder before Asuma opened a large door, leading the group into a large hall. The group entered and the hall was massive, with the ceiling 8 meters above them. In front of them, there was a balcony on the far end of the hall, and there, several people were standing by for them. Among them was the Hokage. Also, there were several other young ones grouped at the balcony, all staring back at the group. Alright maggots, group up with the rest and we can shortly begin the Elemental Knight's trial exams. Asuma barked and then leaped from the wooden floor and up onto the balcony, joining the rest. Shino observed the judges above them on the balcony and said to the group, "They're all Elemental Knights." Sasuke checked the judges as well and had a confident grin spread across his face when he recognized each of the veteran Elemental Knights. The group joined in with the others, and Naruto realized there was actually a lot more taking the Elemental Knight's exam. He assumed it was just Shikamaru and his friends, but altogether, there were at least 50 people here. At the balcony, Asuma approached the Hokage and then whispered something to him. The old man, Naruto observed, was smoking a pipe, which Asuma probably inherited the smoking habit. The Hokage looked to be around his 60s. He definitely had wrinkles on his face, and on his hips was a sword strapped to him in a sheath. The Hokage, considered to be the most powerful elemental knight of the Fire Empire, wore a different outfit compared to the sleeveless, purple outfit and instead wore a white robe with a hat that had the word "fire" written in kanji on it. After a while, the Hokage whispered something back and Asuma gave a bow and stepped back, joining the other elemental knights and looked down below at the young ones. The Hokage stepped forward and approached the railing of the balcony, removing his pipe and releasing smoke from the corner of his lips. He then stared down at the group of young graduates. "Good morning to you all, I hope you all had a pleasant morning," the Hokage began, smiling at the young ones below, "but first, let me officially congratulate all of you who have passed the exams held at the military academy. I'm sure your friends by now are undergoing strict training to be part of the Fire Empire's military forces. But to the lot of you, you have decided that you wish to try and become one of the elite forces of the Fire Empire, the Elemental Knights." The Hokage spoke with a passion that ignited the feeling as if the group had already successfully become enlisted into the Elemental Knights. Naruto felt that the Hokage was a wonderful leader. He carried an aura of respect and yet compassion to everyone. The Hokage continued, "As many of you know, the Elemental Knights are warriors of each empire that can manipulate a natural element. Not everyone was capable of doing so, and thus, normally only the ones who could manipulate elements were inducted to stand as an Elemental Knight. Of course, the history of the Elemental Knights was much deeper than this. I am sure you have learnt this in the academy," Sarutobi stated, "but I will remind you all that the beginnings of the Elemental Knight began when the first Hokage and the one who introduced the Elemental Knight was Senju Hashirama. During his time, there were no such things as Elemental Knights and only warriors who could manipulate elements. However, Senju Hashirama realized that there was a method to recognize a warrior who had the potential to become an Elemental Knight, and thus, the term was born. The other four powers also began using Hashirama's method, which we shall be using later. At the time, Hashirama was considered the strongest Elemental Knight, and he probably would be in this era if he was still alive. During Hashirama's time, anyone who could manipulate an element became an Elemental Knight. Sarutobi paused. However, that was not the case in the Fire Empire. To become an Elemental Knight of Konoha, one must also be well versed in combat to truly serve the Fire Empire. For example, the late Yellow Flash never truly had an element he could use. He could use the fire element, a natural element among us, but was not the best at it. However, his skill with the blade was what put him at the top compared to the rest. If he could have managed both skill and element, he would have been considered the most powerful Elemental Knight in history. Another example would be a current Elemental Knight, Mato Gai. At this, a man stepped forward and posed with a thumb up, smiling brightly. The group below was stunned at the action while the other Elemental Knights shook their head in embarrassment. The Hokage laughed lightly at Gai's antics. Mato Guy is an exception as he cannot manipulate any element at all. However, his skills in martial arts are second to none. He is considered the best in terms of close-quarter combat, and even I will lose to Guy if I engaged him with just my fists. He specializes in hand-to-hand combat, and despite not being able to use any elements, we allowed him to be an elemental knight because of that exception. If one of you cannot use an element later on, do not be discouraged, as we will be assessing you all through 3 trials. Sarutobi then looked back. With that, I'll hand it over to the next speaker. The Hokage stepped back as he ended his speech, and another figure took the spotlight. The man thanked the Hokage with a bow and then glared down at the recruits. Naruto's jaw dropped open when he saw the man, recognizing him immediately. Even worse, the man spotted him in a split second as well and smiled beneath his mask, interested that the boy actually was going through with this. I am Hatake Kakashi, and I shall now explain the 3 trials you will face today to become an elemental knight. Kakashi began. However, the group of students was already mesmerized and whispering with one another. Although Naruto had managed to somehow locate Kakashi easily a week ago, Kakashi was normally rarely seen in Konoha. Kakashi preferred to be alone, and only very few knew how to find him. It was a wonder that Naruto somehow found Kakashi in a bookstore, of all places, buying an adult book for his stress reliever. So this is the great white fan Uchiha. One of the recruits mumbled. I heard he is the last student of the Yellow Flash of Konoha. A girl gossiped with her friend. Even Shikamaru, Chuji, and in their circle of friends looked impressed at Kakashi's presence. The only one was Sasuke, who simply listened intently at full attention. Naruto also found it weird why Kakashi had a nickname with the clan name Uchiha in part of his nickname. There are altogether 3 trials that we shall hold. Kakashi explained. I will not explain the next 2 until we finish the first one, which we shall begin after I explain what we're doing. The white-haired elemental knight paused for a moment, then continued, we shall be testing to see which one of you can bring out an element within you. At this, the group of recruits began murmuring with one another, speaking about what Kakashi had just said. Kakashi then snapped his fingers and the door of the hall opened. The group of recruits turned around to find several people dragging in a large block of wood. They set the log in the center of the hall and then left quickly. Once they had shut the door, Kakashi explained what it was. This is one of Hashirama-sama's legacies, Kakashi stated. Hashirama-sama had poured some of his powers into this log that will recognize a person's element and reveal it on his body. This is the method that Hashirama used to discover who had the power of the elements and who didn't. You just have to touch the wood, pour your chakra, and then we'll know if you possess the ability to use elements. The log was as tall as a door and thick like a box, a very big piece of log. Naruto gulped at the size and also began feeling nervous. This was the first trial, and in a sense, this trial would determine what the judges thought of you. An elemental knight needed to be able to use elements, and if he failed at it. No, Naruto realized he needed to be positive about this. Alright then, let's begin. Kakashi ordered and took out a checklist. First candidate, Uchiha Sasuke. Naruto turned to the arrogant Uchiha as the raven-haired youngster walked towards the large log with supreme confidence. Ino, Sakura, and the other girls in the group cheered for Sasuke with vigor. Amongst the squeals of the girls, Sasuke was composed as he stood before the log and then moved his right hand towards the log and touched it. Nothing happened, and only then Sasuke poured a small amount of chakra into the log. Slowly, Sasuke's right arm was surrounded by electricity, just some small static on his forearm. Then slowly, the current moved to his whole body, and then flashes of lightning coursed through his body, with an occasional flash of lightning. Everyone in the group of recruits now saw the potential that Sasuke possessed. Very nice Uchiha Sasuke, Kakashi called out, scribbling something on the checklist, you can stop now. You passed the first trial. Sasuke removed his hand from the log and returned to the group, grumbling with the loud squeals and cheers of girls at his success. The next candidate was called out and this time was unsuccessful. It immediately threw his confidence and morale, with the next candidate failing as well. Several more were called up and some succeeded, others failed. "Uzumaki Naruto, you're next," Kakashi called. Naruto gulped and stepped up, moving towards the log. Chuji gave words of encouragement while Shikamaru merely watched on. Shikamaru was never a talker, but he was going to put his faith on Naruto for this one. Naruto arrived before the log and then placed his hand on the wooden block. The log felt like nothing special, and Naruto poured his chakra into the log, waiting for his element to show itself. A second passed. Then 15 seconds passed with nothing happening. At this point, Naruto was already sweating bullets. The group of recruits were also wondering what Naruto was doing, and the elemental night judges were growing impatient. Why? Why is my element not showing itself? Naruto thought. Arc, Elemental Night Exams. Naruto sweated profusely with the palm of his hand still planted on the block of wood, unable to think of what he should do next. Everyone was still staring at his back, wondering. Naruto was waiting for. Naruto realized then that he was going to fail the first trial, his dreams were going to be crushed and he could do nothing about it. Naruto was beginning to tremble and he felt the stares from everyone like daggers stabbing him in the back. He wondered when Kakashi would call out that he had failed the trial and his chances of becoming an elemental knight were already diminishing. What's he doing? He doesn't have an element, does he? One of the young recruits whispered. Yeah, I think so. As for the elemental knights witnessing the scene, they too agreed that Naruto probably had no elements. Well, it's no surprise. Not everyone has an element. It looks like he's another one to join the regular army. Genma, an above-average elemental knight, nodded. Well, it's normal. Among the recruits every year, only about 5 make it to become an elemental knight. This year so far, there are already 4, so it's promising, but, well. As for the Konoha 9, they were not surprised by Naruto's failure to call up an element. He was just nothing but a commoner after all, with any military training at all. Chuji was saddened by the fact, but there was no helping it. Sasuke held a stoic face, but he was pissed that Naruto was already going to destroy the reputation of this year's recruits. He wanted everyone to Sasuke's year were unique, to have the highest amount of graduates to be selected among the elemental knight ranks. However, among the elemental knights, only the Hokage and a select few of the best elemental knights had noticed Naruto's dilemma. Kakashi was one of them, and the silver-haired swordsman turned to the old Hokage, his silence more than enough to tell the Hokage what he wanted to do. Sarutobi nodded and Kakashi leaped from the balcony, landing on Naruto's side. The other elemental knights were surprised by the sudden move. It's not obvious, Sarutobi began. Genma, may I see the list of graduates again? Genma obeyed quickly and handed the checklist to the aged Hokage. The old man thanked Genma and then browsed through the names before he landed on Naruto's name. Sarutobi then had a smile grow on his face. Naruto. That's a name that I've not seen registered into the military academy. Hokage-sama. Sarutobi handed the checklist back to Genma and looked at where Kakashi was. I've lived a long life, serving as a soldier for the Fire Empire. I've got good memory and every year, I know all of the names that graduated from the military academy. Naruto. I have never seen his name being registered into the military academy. Several of the elemental knights now got the picture. Wait, you mean? He's probably just a commoner and has no idea how to draw out chakra. Sarutobi concluded, even though it is in the rules that anyone can attempt to take the elemental knight's exam, never in all my years have I seen a citizen attempt to. Should we kick him out? An elemental knight by the name of Ebisu asked. Sarutobi shook his head. Why should we? There are no rules saying that he cannot sit for the elemental knight's trials. I know, Hokage-sama. But. Ebisu protested, but Sarutobi silenced him. Let him have his chance. Everyone deserves to prove their worth. Naruto was waiting for Kakashi to tell him that he had failed the trial, that Kakashi was right in their encounter a week ago. Naruto did not even want to look at the renowned elemental knight in the eyes. Silence was shared between the two, and everyone else, except the Hokage, wondered what Kakashi was going to say. The silence lasted a whole 30 seconds before Naruto finally broke the silence. Well. You're going to say, "I told you so," right? You want to mock me? Well, go ahead. But, I'm not going to give up. I'll find another way to become an elemental knight, believe it. Kakashi was amused at Naruto's words. Oh. Well, I guess you can prove yourself now. Huh? Naruto, do you even know how to draw out chakra? Kakashi asked rhetorically. Naruto blinked a couple of times before he scratched his head in embarrassment. Ehehe, No, I never read any of that from the books I found in the library. I need to draw out chakra then. Yes, Naruto, and I'll teach you how. But unfortunately, this is still a trial exam, so you only have one attempt, and normally, students take at least a couple of weeks before they learn how to do it. It took me 2 days as well, but we're going to be fair and give you a shot. Alright. Just you watch, I'll ace this in one shot. Kakashi found it amusing with Naruto's optimistic character. There was never a moment that Kakashi found Naruto to give up, even after the trash beating he had given last week and Kakashi's poisoning words. Most would have given up. Hell, normally citizens would not even dare to try and take up the elemental knight exams unless if they were from the military academy. Thus Kakashi gave a brief but detailed explanation of what chakra was and how Naruto could release his chakra. Of course, Kakashi only spent about half a minute on this, and he knew Naruto was not going to get it, but the boy deserved a chance. But this was an exam to induct one into the elite forces of the Fire Empire. Kakashi could not throw any sense of favoritism on any individual. Alright, I think I got it. Naruto said after Kakashi finished, just leave it to me. Kakashi chuckled and walked away. Good luck, kid. Kakashi returned to the balcony with the other elemental knights, nodding towards the Hokage to signal that he already did what he could. The rest was up to Naruto now. Naruto took a deep breath and then stepped forward once more. Slowly, he placed his right hand on the wooden block again and followed Kakashi's vague instructions. Honestly, Naruto understood nothing of what Kakashi had just told him, but Naruto something about letting the energy go, which was not helping much. So, Naruto was just going to let his instincts guide him to wherever it would. 10 seconds passed and nothing happened, and Naruto knew that it was useless. He either did not release chakra into the wooden block or he had no element. It did not matter. This was his second chance and he blew it. Kakashi and the other elemental knights were of course expecting this. Kakashi looked through the checklist and found Naruto's name and picked up a pen, about to write out a cross on a box next to his name. The boy had determination to follow his dream, but that was not enough. Reality was far too harsh and Kakashi felt bad to do this to Naruto. Look! All of the elemental knights heard the voice of Hinata down below and then saw her pointing at Naruto. Everyone's eyes then fixated on Naruto, and then were shocked by the sight. Sarutobi himself was surprised by the feat and smiled at the achievement. Across the right arm of Naruto, a strong current of wind was flowing on it. It was not as impressive as Sasuke's lightning display earlier, but it was visible enough. Naruto's eyes were wide open in surprise and did not know how to react. Naruto turned to glance at Kakashi on the balcony and saw the masked man with a smile on his face. That's impossible," Ebisu remarked, fixing his glasses in disbelief. "There's no way that kid could have managed to do that on the spot." Another elemental knight added. Sarutobi laughed. "Oh, it looks like this boy is more than meets the eye." Sarutobi turned to Kakashi. "What do you think?" Kakashi scribbled something on the checklist before he replied. "It's impressive that he managed. I don't think anyone has ever done that in the history of the Fire Empire." Asuma nodded. "That brat's got something hidden, and I'll give him that." But perhaps that's just some sort of beginner's luck. We'll have to see how well he does in the second part of the trial. Beginner's luck or not, what Naruto just did was impressive. No one had ever managed to use chakra by just learning on the spot. It would take an average student several weeks at least. Kakashi retorted. Maybe, but this was the simplest of tests. It was only impressive because he never learned how to use chakra. Let's see how the commoner does in the following trials. Kakashi sighed and refused to come up with a response. Asuma was an elemental knight that took pride on only the elemental knights. While he was a good man, Asuma tended to only hold respect for those who were in the elemental knights and saw citizens and the average soldiers in the army as somewhat lower than his status. It was not arrogance, but it was also not the kind of attitude that one needed. Uzumaki Naruto, you've passed the first trial. Return to the others so that the next candidate can proceed. Kakashi spoke with authority. Sarutobi rubbed his chin as he thought, Uzumaki. How is that name not reminding anyone of Kushina? Kushina had been known to have extreme power over her spirit, hence her chakra control. That allowed her to wield the blade of the kitsune. And now this boy has the name of Uzumaki. Could it be? Naruto removed his hand from the wooden block and instantly the current of air disappeared. Naruto looked at his hand and then at the wood and then back at his hand. Slowly, he grinned and was trembling with joy. This was an achievement he could not comprehend and finally the joy burst from him. Naruto screamed at the top of his lungs as he returned to the group, cheering madly about his achievement. Calm down Naruto, Chuji said when Naruto reached them, you did well but let's not celebrate too early huh? Kiba gave a wild pat on Naruto's back. I have to admit though, I thought you weren't going to pass. Way to prove me wrong, ha ha ha. Considering that he had no military background, it was impressive indeed that you managed to pass through the first trial Naruto, Shino commented. Not only that, you also possess an element, the wind element. I give my congratulations to you. Naruto felt awkward from Shino's formal way of speaking and merely laughed at that. However, he was glad that the others in the group were at least accepting him. Hinata gave a slight bow, her cheeks flushed beet red. Congratulations, Naruto-kun. Wayo you did really well. I mean, go good. Naruto grinned, thanks. Hinata, right? Sorry, I haven't got all of you guys' names yet, but, well, yeah, thanks Hinata. I hope you do well when it's your turn. Hinata somehow managed to turn even redder, and wanted to say something but she ended up mumbling the words and no one heard her. It was not just the Konoha 9 that were congratulating him, other graduates from the military academy were definitely impressed that Naruto managed to use chakra on the spot. Sasuke made his way to Naruto, the other graduates either moving to the side or being forced aside by Sasuke. Naruto was flustered by all the praises that by the time he noticed it, Sasuke was before him. Silence welcomed the hall, even the elemental knights wondered what was going to happen. Many knew that the Uchiha by nature were powerful but also had a case of being the best sort of ego. Not bad dope. You've got my interest now. Sasuke said and then walked back to his spot. Naruto made no comment and did not know what to say. Sasuke was an asshole earlier and now, it was like Sasuke respected him. Naruto wondered if all Uchihas were this weird. Kakashi continued calling names to step up to the wooden block to test if they had a natural element. Most did not possess any and only a few made it back with an element. It was lowering the motivation of most of the graduates and none could blame them. I have to admit Naruto, I thought you were just an idiot but it looks like you've got some promise. A voice said. Naruto turned to the voice and was staring at the pink-haired girl. I'm Sakura, Haruno Sakura. Oh. Right, you're that girl who's always hogging with that duck hair. What's up? Sakura popped a vein in anger, you. He has a name you know, it's Sasuke-kun. Well, sorry but he's the one who insulted me first. I'm not going to like him just because he suddenly talked to me nicely. Sakura sighed, okay, Sasuke-kun sometimes can be rude but he's nice deep down. Well, you and that Ino fighting for his attention is not helping to improve his mood, that's for sure. Sakura ignored the comment. Anyway, how did you do it? You've never learned chakra control, and it took me at least a week during my time at the military academy before I could properly control the flow of chakra. Honestly, I don't know, Naruto admitted. I mean, Kakashi's explanation was kinda vague, but I managed, I guess. But the two conversations ended when Kakashi announced, "Alright guys, which brings an end the first trial. I'll begin the explanation for the second trial, so listen up." All of the graduates along with the Konoha 9 waited before Kakashi continued. Congratulations to all who had passed the first trial exams. To those who have not passed, well, do not be discouraged about the second phase of the trial. You will all still have your own chance to prove yourself. As Hokage-sama had said, the elemental knights are based on the overall skills of the individual. There are some elemental knights who do not possess an element, but they are inducted because of their skills. The second and third trial will test this. The elemental knights are the elite forces of the Fire Empire. Thus, they will be given only the most difficult of missions, and some missions might go against what you morally feel against, but one has to do so. This is what the second trial will test. We will be selecting a number of you graduates to battle out with instructions on each opposing side. Whoever completes the objective will pass the trial. Wait. Sakura voiced out, that means that half of us will fail and the other half will pass? Kakashi glared at Sakura, and is that a problem? Well, I thought that we'll all have a chance to pass. I mean. Kakashi grinned. Well then, that means you're going to have to work harder to pass now, won't it? Another elemental knight then approached Kakashi with a box, and Kakashi took hold of it, thanking the man. Then Kakashi explained, inside this box are your names placed in random. I will pull out 2 names and then you are to proceed for the second trial. Kakashi then rummaged through the box and pulled out 2 tiny slips of paper. Everyone among the graduates was waiting nervously, wondering whose names were going to be called first. When Kakashi read the 2 names, the silver-haired knight wondered if the gods were testing the poor boy. It seems like everything was against him, so Kakashi honestly hoped that the boy could pull through for the next round. Uzumaki Naruto vs Uchiha Sasuke. Uzumaki Naruto vs Uchiha Sasuke. The words echoed several times in Naruto's mind, but the words would not go away. Naruto wondered why he felt like fate kept challenging him, kept trying to make sure he either failed the Elemental Knight's exam or, if he passed, to make sure the exam was a living hell for him. Sasuke glared at Naruto with a confident grin and moved towards the center of the massive hall. Kakashi was already at the center, waiting for the pair to step up. Kakashi could tell that Naruto was reluctant about this fight, and the masked elemental knight could not blame him. I pity the boy, Kakashi thought, he has the worst of luck. It was a miracle he made it out of the first trial, but now. It was not just Kakashi, but almost all of the elemental knights that were present were thinking the same thing. The simple fact that Naruto was a normal citizen was enough for the elemental knights to tell that Naruto had no chance at all in the second trial. This would test a candidate's skills in tactics and fighting abilities. Sarutobi sighed and made no judgment on the boy, but Sarutobi admitted that the odds were heavily against Naruto. But, in his years as an elemental knight, sometimes the underdog could pull a surprise or two, and that might be what Naruto needed to get the win. Naruto finally reached the center of the hall and Sasuke smirked. I'll admit, Dobe, you've caught my interest from the first trial. I thought you were just an idiot that just said whatever he wanted that came into that tiny head of yours. But, it seems that you've got something in you. To draw out chakra on your first try, even that took me 2 days to master. Well, I'm always full of surprises. Naruto joked. Well, it's impressive. So that's why I'm not going to go easy on you. There's no way in hell I'm going to lose to a beginner. Naruto never liked the arrogant Uchiha ever since he first saw him when he entered the ramen restaurant. His attitude definitely did not help Naruto for a positive perception of Sasuke. Now would be the best opportunity to kick the Uchiha's ass, but he heard that Sasuke was the best in the graduating class, so that was not going to be possible. Alright, let's get this started. We don't have all day and this is just the beginning of the second trial. Kakashi began. Naruto and Sasuke turned to Kakashi and listened in, along with everyone. As I said before, Kakashi continued, the Elemental Knights are the elite forces of not just the Fire Empire but all of the major powers as well. As an Elemental Knight, only the most difficult and important type of tasks will be assigned to us all, which will help maintain the Fire Empire's status. However, to become an Elemental Knight is not just about possessing an element or the necessary skills, it takes dedication as well. Dedication to the mission. This second trial will test that. Kakashi explained, because there will come a time when your own personal beliefs and morals will be conflicted on the mission. To be an Elemental Knight, it means to serve the Fire Empire, and one cannot risk failing the mission because of hesitation on your personal beliefs. We shall now test all of you candidates' dedication in this second part. Sarutobi listened to Kakashi's words with an amused grin, because what Kakashi had just said was true, that an Elemental Knight had to throw away their personal feelings in the mission. Yet, Sarutobi knew that was impossible. Even if they were all elite forces, they were all humans after all, and emotions were impossible to remove. Sarutobi also knew that even Kakashi himself had allowed his own personal opinions interfere with his mission. So while the second trial would test their dedication on the mission, it was more to test the skills of a candidate. Sarutobi had heard a lot of Sasuke's capabilities with the katana, so the old Hokage would witness it with his own eyes. Sasuke was after all from the famed Uchiha clan. It was a pity that Naruto had to be Sasuke's opponent, because while Naruto had the will and spirit, Naruto had no proper training. After the brief introductions done, Kakashi decided to head into the main course. Alright then, this will be the assignment for the two of you. Naruto and Sasuke stood when Kakashi tossed a document towards Naruto. The blonde grabbed it on instinct and then stared at Kakashi in confusion. Alright Naruto, let's for this second trial, you are to imagine you have been assigned to deliver a top-secret document back to Konoha. You cannot allow the document to fall into the hands of the enemy Naruto. Kakashi instructed and then turned to Sasuke. Sasuke, you're the enemy and you will need to recover back the document before Naruto makes it back with the document. Wait, I don't get it, Naruto interrupted, I have to return it to Konoha? I am in Konoha. Well, let me finish explaining, Naruto. This is just a simulation after all. Naruto, you need to personally deliver this document into the safe hands of the Hokage while Sasuke has to stop you. One of you will pass and one of you will fail. Are there any further questions? Naruto scratched his head. I just have to run over there and give it to the old man? That's correct, Naruto. Sasuke's objectives will be to stop you from doing so and retrieve the document. Now, are there any more questions? Naruto and Sasuke had none, so Kakashi snapped his fingers. Begin. Kakashi disappeared instantly and had returned to where the Elemental Knights were all located. The hall was large, so Naruto's destination, which was the Hokage, was about 30 meters away. Naruto was beginning to feel nervous, his knees trembling slightly. This was a real fight, the second trial to progress towards his dream. He could not fail now, but the odds were definitely against him. Naruto took a quick glance at the distance between the Hokage and his current position, and then at where Sasuke was. Although Naruto was definitely not the sharpest tool in the shed, he was as smart as a street rat when it came to survival. It was how he managed his life as an orphan. Man, I don't get it, Kiba whined, what's this got to do with testing our dedication to Elemental Knight missions? I don't see anything here that will challenge either the idiot or the duck hair on personal beliefs. It depends on your perspective, Kiba, Shino stated. The way I see it, it's a challenge on the Uchiha's prideful nature. Huh? How is the new guy going to hurt the Uchiha's pride? You should very well know that their pride stems in a number of ways, Shino pointed out. For one, they prefer to not waste time engaging someone they consider lower than them. The fact that Naruto is a citizen with no skills at all should take a vital blow on his pride, but it is his mission now in this second trial to defeat Naruto. PFT, the Uchiha sure are weird. Kiba said. Sasuke drew out his katana and the blade glistened brightly. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Are you going to kill me with that? Naruto shrieked in horror. Sasuke smirked. This is a trial and it's just like what the White Fang Uchiha said, we have to throw away any moral beliefs to prove ourselves. Now, prepare yourself. With that as his final warning, Sasuke charged towards Naruto. Naruto widened his eyes in surprise at the sheer speed of Sasuke, barely leaping away as Sasuke slashed the air. Without a moment of hesitation, Sasuke appeared before Naruto again and slammed the handle of his katana onto Naruto's gut, knocking the air out of the blonde. Naruto dropped on all fours, and if this was a true battle, Sasuke would have easily decapitated Naruto's head. Instead, Sasuke kicked Naruto in the gut with all his might, throwing Naruto across the hall. The difference between the two was like an ant challenging an elephant. It was a one-sided result. Naruto coughed out blood, the red liquid splattering across the floor. You did well in surprising all of us at passing the first trial, Naruto, Sasuke praised, but in the end, you have no proper training. Even more, I am an Uchiha. You've already lost the moment you were put against me, although I had hoped you would pose a little bit more challenge. Naruto grunted in pain, wiping the blood off the side of his lips. Well, how about we fight fair and square then? Throw away your weapon, I don't have any. I'll show you what I'm made of. Naruto got back up but his legs were shaky. Naruto's words seemed to have affected Sasuke, the Uchiha not moving an inch and did not blink. It was as if Sasuke had become a statue, unmoving. Then with the discipline of a soldier, Sasuke sheathed his sword and then moved into a stance. His two hands rose up at eye level with his right foot in front of him. It was almost a standard Muay Thai stance. Alright, I'll humor you, Dobe, Sasuke said finally, let's see what you've got. Naruto grinned and moved into a weird stance that Sasuke had never seen or read about before in his academy days. Naruto's stance was just basically his fists in front of him, ready for a brawl. Sasuke tried to spot anything of the sort that would make sense, but it would seem to Sasuke that Naruto was not using any type of fighting stance. The hell's the kid doing? Is he even trying? An elemental knight cried in laughter. Ugh, it's like he's just making a joke out of the trials. Another commented. Kakashi heard the remarks and while he might have agreed with them, Naruto was a special case. It was true that Kakashi had easily defeated Naruto in a short brawl with Naruto some time ago, but that was because Kakashi was one of the strongest elemental knights. The white-haired warrior held a vast amount of experience and it allowed Kakashi to adapt to Naruto's fighting style. For an untrained civilian, Kakashi could tell Naruto had his very own fighting style. Sasuke moved in and struck first, throwing his fist towards Naruto. Naruto ducked and retaliated, throwing a flurry of attacks towards Sasuke. It was only thanks to Sasuke's upbringing and training that allowed Sasuke to dodge the blows, but Naruto's move definitely surprised Sasuke. It was even weird that Naruto continued to pressure Sasuke, throwing a mix of kicks and punches towards Sasuke. The Uchiha realized that because of Naruto's weird stance, Naruto's attacks were not following any sort of pattern or form. They were all just random attacks and that Naruto was probably just throwing an attack without even thinking of his next one. This made it much more difficult for Sasuke to spot an opening. What's up with him? Sasuke thought, avoiding another punch thrown at him. He's not attacking with any form at all. I've never heard of this before. Naruto was a street rat, an orphan. There were times when he needed to defend himself and over the years, while his fighting style was not disciplined, it was still a unique type. There was no type of form that allowed him to beat the attackers, but there was one weakness in this fighting form, using it against a trained soldier. While Naruto's attacks were random, Sasuke analyzed them properly. Naruto threw a wild kick and Sasuke finally found the opening, grabbing onto Naruto's foot. Still holding onto Naruto's foot, Sasuke then used the momentum and swept Naruto's other leg, throwing Naruto onto the hard ground. Before Naruto could get up, Sasuke surrounded his right fist with his lightning element and smashed a thunderous blow on the center of Naruto's chest with his lightning fist. Naruto spurted blood upon impact, the red liquid splattering across the floor and some landing back on his chin and chest. On Naruto's chest, some remnants of static electricity was still present, chirping loudly in the hall. The fight was practically over at this point. Sasuke drew out his katana once more and pointed it at Naruto. "You've lost the fight, dope. Give it up." Naruto was panting heavily and glared at Sasuke. "Heh. This is, not over. I admit that you hold some sort of talent for a person without any proper training, but that's all the praise you'll get. You stand no chance against any of us, even more against an Uchiha. This isn't about defeating the other." Naruto struggled to say, clutching his chest, "The second trial, that one-eyed guy said it. You have to retrieve the document, and I have to, hand it to the old man." Sasuke narrowed his eyes, wondering where Naruto was trying to go with this. Naruto took out the document and held it out of arm's reach from Sasuke. "You need to retrieve this, and I need to give it to the Hokage," Naruto repeated. "Well, I'm defeated, but I'm not going to fail the mission." Without a moment of hesitation, Naruto tore the document in half, shocking everyone in the hall. After that, the blonde orphan continued to shred the document into tiny little bits of pieces and then threw them into thin air, scattering the pieces of paper across the hall. Everyone was stunned by Naruto's actions, watching the scene unfold before them. Sasuke was the first to utter a word. What the hell are you doing?" Naruto chuckled with a victory sign. He. Just think about it. If this was a real mission, I needed to return the document back to the Hokage. Obviously you're the better one, I've been defeated. But, if that was the case, then, it's on the best interest of the Fire Empire that I destroy whatever was on that document rather than it fall on enemies' hands. The words echoed and reached the ears of everybody, shaking everyone to the core. Sasuke himself was frozen in the spot. His katana still pointed towards Naruto in a victorious manner, but the words Naruto used carried a lot of weight. Kakashi had said in the beginning, the Elemental Knights were the elite forces of an empire and that the Elemental Knights needed to do what was necessary to serve the empire's best interest. The other Elemental Knights were also murmuring with each other, discussing who was to be the winner of this fight. However, it was clear in the eyes of Kakashi and Sarutobi of what the results were. As the examiner of the Elemental Knights trial exam this year, Kakashi had the final say the result. However, determining who became an Elemental Knight was out of Kakashi's hand. The winner of the first round of the second trial of the Elemental Knights exam, Uzumaki Naruto. Kakashi announced. "What?" Several cried in shock. The girls among the Gradu. Ino staggered back, almost falling on her behind. "Sasuke-kun, what? That can't be. Sasuke-kun can't lose." Sakura was speechless as well. "Sasuke-kun." None in the arena could believe that the Uchiha had lost, not to an untrained citizen. Sasuke himself was still frozen in place, his hand wielding the katana trembling slightly. Sasuke turned to Kakashi, who was approaching them. "What do you mean I lost?" Sasuke demanded. "You saw the fight, right? I wiped the floor against the dobe. How the hell can you say that he won the match?" Kakashi shrugged. "That's true, but you forget the main purpose of the second trial while Naruto did not. He thought of the mission, and while he did not complete it, he sure as hell made it so that you can't complete it as well. If this was a real mission, Naruto basically foiled your plans. It's good thinking on his part. This is unacceptable. I want a rematch." "You lost, Sasuke, there will be no rematch. Now return to your friends and accept that your strain of thought caused you to lose the match. The second trial was about the mission, not about a test of skills." With that, Kakashi walked past Sasuke and then offered his hand to Naruto. That was smart thinking there, Naruto. Good job on that. Naruto winced in pain but gladly accepted the help, the elemental knight veteran pulling Naruto to his feet. Naruto could feel the pain on his chest, and Kakashi had to help the blonde return to the others. As for Sasuke, he followed behind them, feeling anger, not on Naruto or Kakashi, but at his carelessness. Uzumaki Naruto. Sasuke thought, glaring at Naruto's back, I'll pay you back for this humiliation. It looks like you're still full of surprises, so I'll make sure I beat you the next time we meet. Everyone watching Kakashi assist Naruto to walk either held a sense of admiration for the boy while others hated him, mostly the fangirls. Some of the elemental knights as well could not believe it still that Naruto was allowed to be the victor, while the sensible elemental knights felt that Naruto deserved it with his thinking of being an elemental knight. So, I've passed 2 out of 3. My chances should be quite high, right? Naruto said with a weak grin. Kakashi hesitated before he gave a reassuring smile, although his smile was hidden by his mask. Yeah. I'm sure you'll pass. Naruto grinned once more when they finally reached the Konoha 9. Chuji greeted and congratulated Naruto cheerfully along with Shikamaru as well, although the Nara prodigy did it less enthusiastically, what with his lazy nature and all. Shino and Kiba gave a nod of approval while Hinata tried to congratulate Naruto, but her squeaky voice drowned in the voices of her friends. As for Sasuke, he was immediately surrounded by several girls with their annoying high-pitched cries, volunteering to cheer Sasuke up. However, this merely annoyed the Uchiha, throwing all the fangirls a death stare, immediately silencing all of them. Sasuke gritted his teeth in frustration at his loss, but reasoned that in terms of skill, he was still the better one. He just needed to be more careful next time. Alright, will the next ones come to the center of the hall? Nara Shikamaru and Namoto Iwata. Kakashi called out. Shikamaru sighed tiredly, this is so troublesome. Shikamaru and another graduate proceeded towards the center of the hall, but Kakashi remained for a while with Naruto. Well, you just rest up, Naruto. Once the second trial ends, it will decide who becomes an elemental knight. Kakashi told Naruto. Naruto found it surprising, huh? How come? What about the third trial? I thought there were 3 trials. Kakashi nodded in confirmation, yes, but the third trial is just a simple oath to take. So, we decide on who becomes an elemental knight after the second trial so that those chosen can take their oath. While we did say there were 3 trials, we test the first 2 only to determine who becomes an elemental knight. Oh, that's cool. I hope I can make it. Chuji said nervously. Kakashi gave Chuji a pat on Chuji's shoulder. You're an Akimichi and the son of Chuza. I'm sure you'll do fine. Anyway, I need to return and examine the second match. Kakashi turned around and walked away, giving a wave at Naruto and his friends. Chuji was ecstatic, however. I can't believe the White Fang Uchiha actually talked to me. Naruto turned to Chuji. Why is he given that name? Is he also part of the Uchiha clan? I'm not so sure, Chuji responded, pondering for a moment, but I heard from my dad that he earned that nickname during the war, after he lost his friend. I'm not very sure of the details after that. Naruto thanked Chuji and then watched Shikamaru's match. Shikamaru and his opponent were given an assignment to work together and fight Kakashi, much to everyone's surprise. However, during the fight, when it was clear neither could hurt Kakashi, Kakashi suddenly gave out a new order that Kakashi was actually an ally and that Shikamaru was a traitor. Shikamaru was given new orders by Kakashi that Shikamaru was actually a double agent and that his cover had been blown. To succeed, he needed to escape the hall, and while he almost did so, Iwata was able to catch Shikamaru. However, Kakashi felt that Shikamaru did a good job, acting on the orders, so Iwata and Shikamaru both passed. The second trial went on much longer than the first, and it would be an hour and a half later before the second end of the trial finally ended. Almost everyone in the Konoha 9's group had passed, except for Sasuke, ironically. However, Sasuke was the only to be matched up against someone among their group, and even though Naruto was nothing but a civilian, everyone now realized that Naruto. The military academy graduates all huddled up as Kakashi returned to the balcony where the Hokage and elemental knights were gathered. The elemental knights all said something to Kakashi, and then the one-eyed elemental knight nodded and looked down at the candidates. Kakashi cleared his throat before he began. The second trial of the elemental knight's exam has ended, and we will now decide on who becomes an elemental knight. After that, we'll move on to the third part of the trial. After that, you'll all become an elemental knight and will be given further instructions. Are there any questions? No one raised their hands or uttered any words, and Kakashi took that as a no, returning to discussing with the other elemental knights. Everyone among the graduates was chattering amongst themselves in anticipation of the results. Naruto was nervous as well, although he felt he should do fine after passing the other two trials. The whole waiting process lasted for quite a while, and some could hear some heated discussion on the balcony with the other elemental knights. However, none could make out what they were speaking about and could only wait, and after 10 minutes had passed, all of the elemental knights jumping down the balcony and forming a line. Kakashi then took a step forward from the line of elemental knights and looked at all of the young candidates. We have finally come to a decision as to who we find worthy to become an elemental knight, Kakashi said. Of the names that I will call out, they are the ones who have been elected to hold the title as an elemental knight. You are to step forward and join the other elemental knights behind me in the line. The rest who were not called, you may leave the halls. Now then, Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke emerged from the group of young candidates with the shrieks and cries of the fangirls. Kakashi nodded and gestured for him to join the senior elemental knights, which Sasuke did. Nara Shikamaru. Shikamaru did the same thing and stood next to Sasuke. This whole process lasted for some time, with a total of 16 names called and joining the elemental knights. The whole of the Konoha 9 were all called out already, and then another name was called out. That is all that have been elected. Kakashi ended, turning to the rest of you may leave the halls. I congratulate those who had participated in the trials, and you did your best, but unfortunately, you lacked the ability to enter our ranks. However, since you have graduated from the military academy, all of you are to report at the academy's hall 2 days from now to be put into a battalion of the Fire Empire's army. As the speech ended, Kakashi saluted the rest and returned in line with the other elemental knights. The senior elemental knights, and the Hokage, whom was still on the balcony, all gave a salute to the candidates that failed the elemental knights exam. The candidates returned the salute and slowly walked out of the hall. Some were in tears about failing the exams, while the rest were not too distraught about it. Naruto, however, was confused, turning left and right and looking at the failed candidates walking out of the hall. Wait, what about me? Naruto said, his voice shaking. Why isn't my name called? Kakashi. Why didn't you call out my name? Kakashi looked away, unable to stare into the eyes of the innocent blonde. Naruto took a step forward. Why didn't you call out my name? I passed, right? Right? Tell me You failed, Naruto. Kakashi finally said, you failed the exams. You're not an elemental knight. And Naruto's dreams came crashing down. Naruto stood there for what seemed like hours, days, months, or even years, when only 5 seconds had passed. This was far too cruel. First it was Mizuki's bull trial, then the fact he had no training, and when he overcame the odds and passed the 2 trials, he still failed the elemental knight exams? For Naruto, this was not acceptable, not after the results he had. Why? Naruto demanded once more. Most of the elemental knights avoided eye contact with Naruto, with only a select few with eyes of sympathy. This was something Naruto could not keep quiet, and he demanded a fair explanation and was not going to leave until he got it. He was not like the others that left the hall, he was a citizen. He had no formal training at all, and the fact he passed 2 of the trials had to mean something. Kakashi, you go ahead and lead the oath, a voice said, I'll explain to Naruto-kun about his circumstance. Everyone turned to the source of the voice and realized it belonged to the oldest elemental knight of the Fire Empire, and also the strongest as well, Sarutobi. The aged elemental knight approached Naruto from a corner, not standing amongst the line of elemental knights. Some of the elemental knights turned to the old man, Hokage-sama. The aged Hokage wore a much different outfit compared to the regular elemental knights, which was a sleeveless purple outfit with a shoulder pad on the left shoulder. But the Hokage's outfit consisted of a white robe with a hat. The old man had a pipe in his mouth, smoking lightly as he approached the young boy. Naruto-kun, Sarutobi began gently, I'll try and explain why you did not pass the elemental knight exams. Come with me. Naruto glared at the Hokage, his eyes still wet with tears, and why should I trust you, old man? You'd probably come up with something to justify why I failed. Sarutobi chuckled at the accusation. I can understand you're angry, Naruto-kun, but do you think an old man like me have any reasons to lie to you? The Hokage then urged Naruto to follow him, moving towards the outside of the hall. Naruto watched the Hokage's back and then back at Kakashi. The white-haired elemental knight nodded his head, urging Naruto to follow the old Hokage. Although Naruto was angry at Kakashi for deceiving him, angry at the results he got, but he decided to hear the Hokage out. By then, the Hokage had walked out of the hall and was waiting for Naruto outside at the corridors. When Sarutobi spotted Naruto, the Hokage began walking again, expecting Naruto to follow. Where are we doing? Naruto demanded. I'll explain everything in my office. You're not going to molest me or anything, right? Where the hell did you get that idea? Sarutobi burst out in anger with several large veins on his head with snot dripping from his nose. Alright, just making sure. Sarutobi realized then that Naruto was truly an unpredictable person. Hall. Alright everyone, gather around. Kakashi called out to the new recruits, I'll be the one to lead the oath, so pay attention. The veteran elemental knights then dispersed from the line and formed a circle around the recruits that passed the elemental knights exam. The recruits faced Kakashi, who did not move from his position. Kakashi was about to begin the oath when one of the recruits stepped out of the group and confronted Kakashi. Kakashi raised his eyebrow, and what do you want? Why the hell was the dobe not allowed to pass the trials? Sasuke cried, I want him to become an elemental knight. Some of the veteran elemental knights was shocked by Sasuke's words. Even the ones in the Konoha 9 were surprised by Sasuke's words, especially since it was Naruto who had defeated him and humiliated him. Kakashi himself was now interested at the young Uchiha's demand. Kakashi crossed his arms on his chest, what's the matter? Does the almighty Uchiha still have a grudge on the civilian? Watch your tongue, Kakashi. Don't forget you owe your life to the Uchiha. The statement by Sasuke seemed to have a deep impact on Kakashi, the white-haired elemental knight shaken and his eyes held a deep regret. The other elemental knights also whispered with each other, witnessing Kakashi being talked down by just a mere recruit. So, what do you want, Sasuke? Kakashi asked Sasuke, the decision has already been made and it cannot be reversed just because you feel like it. I want to know why the hell the decision was made to fail him in the first place. Sasuke responded, tell me frankly Kakashi, you don't think he deserves to fail, right? Kakashi was silent for a few seconds before he answered, individual opinion does not matter, and it won't change the results anyway. Besides, it's not as if the civilian has no chance of becoming an elemental knight. A voice added. Sasuke and Kakashi turned towards Mato Guy, the only elemental knight that currently had no elemental powers. The man approached the two of them with a grin, his shiny bowl-cut hair and thick eyebrows the most prominent features that many identified Mato Guy with. Sasuke turned to the source of the voice, you are. Mato Guy, at your service. Guy introduced passionately, his thumb pointing to himself, the specialist in all forms of hand-to-hand combat and the blue beast of Konoha. Guy, what did you mean that Naruto still has a chance of becoming an elemental knight? Sasuke asked. Well, just because Naruto failed the Elemental Knight exams doesn't mean his chances are gone. Through his youthful determination, if he can prove that he is of a higher level than the regular army, then the Hokage will surely take notice of his flames of youth and allow him to join the Elemental Knights. Guy explained. And what's the proof that a person gets promoted from the army into the ranks of an Elemental Knight? Kakashi chuckled, you're speaking to him. Guy failed the Elemental Knight's exam, but because of his skills, he held some promise, so he was placed under the elite forces of the Fire Empire's army. However, in just under 6 months, he was allowed to enter the ranks of the Elemental Knight since his skills were better suited to an Elemental Knight's mission, and also I heard because the army couldn't handle his strict training regime, he forced his comrades on and going on about the youthful banter. Guy gave a thumb up towards Kakashi and Sasuke, grinning widely, and his teeth even glistened sharply. The rest of the Elemental Knights shook their heads in embarrassment, while Kakashi had no reaction since the white-haired knight had gotten used to Guy's mannerism. The new recruits and the Konoha 9 wondered if all the Elemental Knights had their own weird trait. Although Guy probably took the cake in that department. Ino, Sakura, and the other fangirls were still baffled by Sasuke's character in wanting the blonde civilian to be enacted among the Elemental Knight ranks. With the humiliation that Sasuke had suffered under the hands of Naruto, Ino thought that Sasuke would be relieved that Naruto was not allowed amongst the elite. However, for Sasuke, although Naruto was just a civilian, Sasuke already saw the potential that Naruto had. So, the dobe might have a chance to still become an Elemental Knight. Sasuke confirmed, glaring at Guy and then at Kakashi. Kakashi shrugged, there are no guarantees. From here, it is probably up to Naruto. Sasuke did not understand what Kakashi meant by that, but so long as the chance existed, Sasuke had faith that the dobe would be triumphant. The blonde civilian may have no formal training, but his unpredictable nature along with his determination to get what he wants, Sasuke held no doubts that he would meet Naruto in the near future. Sasuke returned to the group of recruits, which allowed Kakashi to proceed to the next phase. Alright, if there are no more issues, I'd like to begin the oath. Kakashi said. There was no reaction from the recruits, so Kakashi began, do you all accept the roles of becoming an Elemental Knight? Yes. The recruits answered. Do you all understand that by becoming an Elemental Knight, you will sell your body and your soul for the good of the Fire Empire? Yes. This would continue until the oaths were done, but Kakashi was absorbed in other matters. He hoped that the Hokage would explain to Naruto what he could not. Hokage's office. The Hokage's office was nothing special to Naruto's eyes. He thought, as the strongest Elemental Knight of the Fire Empire, he had expected the room to be much more posh. However, Sarutobi's office only consisted of a simple desk and some pictures on the wall. Behind the desk were a set of different weapons, consisting of a katana, a battle axe, and even a bow set by the wall. You can use all of those weapons? Naruto asked, referring to the weapons behind the desk. Sarutobi turned to look at the weapons, then back to Naruto, of course. I'm called the professor for one of those reasons. Oh, cool. Sarutobi sighed and took a seat behind his desk. Listen, Naruto-kun. I know you have every right to be angry that you failed in the Elemental Knight's exam. By right, you should have passed, but that is not how it works. What do you mean? I did what you guys told me to. I passed the first 2 trials, and that's all you guys needed. Sarutobi nodded in agreement. That's true, in normal circumstances, you should have passed. However, in the end, the results are decided by the other Elemental Knights. What do you mean? After the 2 trials, the Elemental Knights vote on who deserves to become an Elemental Knight and who fails. Sarutobi explained, majority of them, they voted against you, so that you failed. What? Why? Naruto asked in a shaky voice. Because they don't want you to become an Elemental Knight, Sarutobi answered, you're only a civilian, Naruto-kun. You had no military training at all, and yet, you were able to pass the trials. It's because of that that they feel threatened. They feel their reputation will be compared to yours one day. An elemental knight who had trained for almost 8 years against you, an elemental knight who never had military training. Do you get the picture? But this is all part of human nature, Naruto-kun. Because of your background as a civilian, they felt embarrassed if you were to become an elemental knight, so they voted against you. It was then that Naruto understood why Kakashi was upset. Majority had voted against Naruto, and from Kakashi's words of encouragement, Kakashi was probably one of the few that felt that Naruto deserved to become an elemental knight. Naruto clenched his fists in anger, but, my dream. This isn't fair. Naruto glared at the Hokage. You're the Hokage, can't you do anything about this? My position holds very little influence in such affairs, Naruto-kun. Yes, I am acknowledged as the most powerful elemental knight in the Fire Empire. But I hold very little power in terms of political affairs or administration. This is out of my hands, Naruto-kun. But, I did vote for you to pass the elemental knight exams, if that helps. Naruto managed to laugh at the Hokage's last sentence. Hee, yeah, it's something, I guess. The two shared a short moment to laugh, but the situation was not resolved. The Hokage cleared his throat and then said, however, despite the elemental knights being unfair to vote you out, they do have a point, Naruto-kun. What do you mean? You don't have any military training, so it'd be difficult to accept you as an elemental knight. When Sarutobi saw Naruto was about to argue, Sarutobi stopped the blonde. Now, let me explain. You have to understand that your skills are nil. You have not had any training, so that's understandable, but if you were to become an elemental knight, that would be a hindrance to the others. But I'll train really hard. I'll do whatever it takes to dash. Sarutobi interrupted Naruto, and I know you will, Naruto-kun. I've seen you in the trials, so I have no doubt that you'll train hard to achieve your dream. However, the problem lies that you need to be up to the standard the moment you become an elemental knight, which I have to say, your battle skills definitely need some work. So, what can I do? Well, I propose this. Technically you did well in the elemental knight exam, so you can still join the Fire Empire's army. With my recommendations, they should take you in and you'll be able to get proper training there. If you can enter the elite forces of the regular army and become the top there, then there might be a chance that I can allow you to become an elemental knight. Sarutobi explained. How long will that take? If you work really hard, at least a year or two, Sarutobi replied, and that's being optimistic. The regular army is huge, it comprises of at least 50,000 soldiers, and the elite force of the regular army is around 2,000. Even then, you need to be the best of the elite forces to allow me to see if you deserve to become an elemental knight. A year? Isn't there any other way? Sarutobi shook his head. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but this is the way you can become an elemental knight now. The elemental knight exams can only be taken once, and even if you can take a second time, the results will be the same. The regular army will enlist the graduates 2 days from now, Naruto-kun, so you have 2 days to decide whether you wish to enter the Fire Empire's army. If you do, you'll need my recommendation letter, which I will write for you. The decision is all yours. Naruto was frustrated with his options. His dream was now becoming much more difficult for him. However, he might still have a slim chance of becoming an elemental knight. The Hokage waited for Naruto's response patiently while Naruto thought it through, contemplating if his dream was still worth chasing. Of course it was still worth chasing, but was there any more obstacles in his path? That, Naruto did not know. I'll think about it, Naruto finally said. The Hokage nodded. Remember, you only have 2 days. I'll need an answer by tomorrow. Naruto understood and left the Hokage office, his mind troubled on what he should do. The next day, Naruto was back at the Ichiraku ramen restaurant and was chilling around in the dining area. It was just 9 in the morning, so business was slow at this hour. Kawato and Ayam were in the kitchen, probably creating some extra noodles with flour, while Tucci was in the office. This allowed Naruto some peace to consider about the Hokage's proposal. Another option that Naruto considered was giving up his dream. Tsuchi had always wanted Naruto and Kawato to inherit the shop, with one of the boys marrying his daughter. While Tsuchi was against the idea of Naruto entering the Elemental Knights, he at least supported Naruto in his dream. Now that his dream was far-fetched, perhaps Naruto should just give it up and help establish the restaurant. After all, reality was harsh and sometimes a person just had to give up his ambitions and commit to what they could. Naruto was removed from his thoughts when the door of the restaurant opened. The bells ringing and signifying that customers had entered. Naruto quickly got up from his seat and was about to return to the kitchen when Naruto recognized the duo. Shikamaru, Tsuji. What's up, guys? Naruto greeted cheerfully. Tsuji and Shikamaru were now dressed in the Elemental Knight uniforms, which Naruto found that the sight suited them. The purple sleeveless uniform complemented their features in a way. Tsuji grinned happily. Hey Naruto. Naruto, are you busy right now? Shikamaru said quickly. Not at the moment. Business is quite slow at this time, but I'll need to be around at lunchtime. Good, then come on. I and Tsuji are going to bring you somewhere. Without allowing Naruto any chance to protest, Shikamaru grabbed hold of Naruto's arm and dragged him out. Naruto never even had a chance to inform Kawato or Ayam that he was heading out. Hey, where are we doing? Naruto cried out. We're going to bring you to the Fire Empire's museum, thought you could use some cheering up. Tsuji said. Naruto quickly got depressed. Oh. This is really nice, guys, but... I mean, you don't need to do this, I'm fine, really. Shut up Naruto, you're going to come with us. Shikamaru declared, you passed the 2 bloody trials. It's because of the selfishness of those senior elemental knights that you didn't get to pass. Naruto was surprised at Shikamaru's statement. How'd you know it was the elemental knight's fault? My dad is one of the elemental knights, Tsuji's dad too. They told us what happened, and it's really sad that those bastards voted you to fail just because they wanted to protect their reputation. Our dads told us about it and thought we could at least help you. Naruto chuckled, I see. Well, not that it matters, there's nothing I can do about it. The Hokage said I could join the regular army and try to enter the elite forces. Then, if I can prove myself, I get to still become an elemental knight. No Naruto, that will take years at least, Tsuji stated. Even if you trained really hard, the least you can do is enter the elite forces in 5 years. But the Hokage said at least 1 year was dash. Shikamaru interjected Naruto, that was the Hokage being overly optimistic. The regular army of the Fire Empire is huge Naruto, it will take a long time for you to even get noticed. So, what? Do I just give up my dream then? Naruto questioned, a little angry at this point. Shikamaru and Tsuji said nothing for a moment as they continued walking. It was 10 seconds later when Shikamaru said, we'll tell you whether you should give up on your dream after the museum trip, alright? Naruto nodded after some time and that ended the conversation between the 3. Tsuji desperately wanted to help Naruto, which was the Akimichi's natural characteristic of being kind and gentle despite their size. Naruto wanted to ask them what the oath was. How it felt now that they were elemental knights, but he realized that Tsuji and Shikamaru would probably prefer to avoid the topic for Naruto's sake. For now, Naruto decided he may as well enjoy the trip to the Fire Empire's museum since he had never been there. There never was an incentive to visit such a place. A couple of minutes later, they arrived before the Fire Empire's museum. It was a big, brown building built in concrete and 3 stories high. There were beautiful designs on the walls of the building, and some pillars by the entrance made of marble. By the entrance, 2 guards were guarding the way in. Come on, let's go. Tsuji said, rushing in. The 2 guards recognized the elemental knight uniforms that Tsuji and Shikamaru were wearing and saluted them as they passed them. Naruto wished he wore the uniform, but then kicked himself for thinking negative thoughts. For now, he just wanted to enjoy the day with his two friends. Thus the three explored the museum, which comprised of different sections. First, they went to the general history of the Fire Empire. That section consisted of several writings on the wall depicting the history of the Fire Empire, the founding of the capital which was Konoha and such. Next, they moved to the history of the Elemental Knights, which explained how Senju Hashirama was the first official Elemental Knight and that he was the one that gave the term of Elemental Knights. Naruto read the history with great interest since he had never learned it in the military academy. After that, the next section was legendary weapons, but before they entered, Shikamaru stopped. "Sorry Naruto, you go on ahead," Shikamaru said. "I and Chuji need to attend to something for a while. We'll meet you back here in a bit, alright?" "Oh, okay." Quickly, Shikamaru dragged his best friend away and left Naruto. The blonde realized he was alone in the silent museum before he entered the legendary weapon section. The section comprised of a small area with some writings. Naruto approached one of the writings and read it. The world contains a known number of 9 legendary weapons, Naruto read. Of the 9, the Fire Empire holds one of the legendary weapons, the Blade of the Kitsune, which was a possession of Senju Hashirama. After Senju Hashirama's passing, the weapon was given to Uzumaki Kushina, who was able to control the power of the weapon. The Blade of the Kitsune is said to possess the fire element and allows the user to massive amounts of energy and fighting spirit, as mentioned by both Hashirama and Kushina. Naruto paused when he read that part, Uzumaki Kushina. Wow, she shares the same last name as me. Naruto then continued reading. After the passing of Uzumaki Kushina, there have been no worthy candidates, as it is said that the blade chooses the user. Now, the Blade of the Kitsune rests here. Naruto then saw the weapon, which was placed on a pedestal. The sword was huge, almost the size of a claymore sword. The handle was wrapped with black leather, and there were some markings on the body of the blade. However, the markings seemed to be of another language, so Naruto could not read them. For some reason, Naruto felt a strange sense of honor to be so close to one of the legendary weapons. As a matter of fact, Naruto found it odd why there were no guards nearby, since this place had a legendary weapon. But, at least now Naruto could get a clear view of the sword without any restrictions. "Closer," a voice whispered. Naruto turned around in panic, but found he was still alone and there was no one else. Naruto turned to the sword once again, and for some strange reason, Naruto felt an irresistible force calling to him. It was like an itch, something that Naruto felt he needed to do. Naruto approached the sword, his steps slow and precise. Naruto was fully engrossed to the legendary weapon before him, and before he knew what was happening, Naruto reached out for the sword. Konoha Museum, with Shikamaru and Chuji. "Seriously Shikamaru, what's the point of bringing Naruto here?" Chuji asked his best friend. "You told me that we're help Naruto become an elemental knight, but all we've been doing is taking a tour of the museum." Shikamaru grinned as he leaned on a wall. "That's where you're wrong, Chuji. I brought him here because I want him to become an elemental knight. I believe we will need him if we want the war between the Fire Empire and the other great powers to come to an end." Chuji was confused now. How? How does this museum help Naruto become an elemental knight? He's an Uzumaki. I'm going to gamble that his name will have some significance in wielding the Kitsune's blade. Chuji never got his chance to respond as the museum was filled with a deathly cry. Konoha Museum, with Naruto. The Blade of the Kitsune was now in the grasp of Naruto. Despite its size, the sword was not so heavy and thus not too much of a burden to Naruto. However, the moment Naruto had grabbed hold of the blade, Naruto was engulfed in flames and Naruto screamed in terror. Fortunately, the flames seemed to not harm him and Naruto was still standing there without suffering from any burns. Naruto also felt a strange surge of strength and power flowing into him. He also felt a deep pain on his stomach, but for some reason, he could not release the great sword. This continued for a few seconds and Naruto's screams caught the attention of almost everyone nearby. including the guards of the museum. "Hey you!" one of the guards shouted. "Are you doing? Put that sword down." However, Naruto could hear nothing apart from the roaring flames. One of the guards growled and drew his blade and ran towards Naruto. However, the moment he neared Naruto, the man was blown away by an invisible force that was so powerful, the man crashed through a wall and was knocked unconscious. After a while, in Naruto's eyes, the flames disappeared instantly. Naruto was suddenly transported into a dark realm with no source of light. There was nothing, just pitch black in an endless void. Naruto looked left and right and tried to find something, anything, to tell him where he was. However, nothing came to his sight. Then out of nowhere, a figure appeared. Naruto realized it was an animal, and the animal was surrounded by fiery, red flames. The creature approached Naruto and with a grin, uttered the words. "So, you're the owner of my sword now," the fox said in a low voice, "the owner of the kitsune's blade." Naruto said nothing, unable to find the words to describe how lost and confused he was. "We do not have enough information about the current situation in the Grass Empire, so I'm assigning you two to find out what's going on," Sarutobi said to the two elemental knights in front of him. Asuma, Sarutobi and Genma of the elemental knights stood before the Hokage, being briefed about their mission. Normally elemental knights worked in pairs, but if the mission was much more difficult, a team of 3 would be sent. "We're already at war with the other 4 great empires, isn't it much more safer to obtain more information about the Grass Empire's situation than sending us in to find out? For all we know, the bastard Suna Empire is just waiting for us to fall for their trap," Asuma argued with his father. Sarutobi nodded in understanding. "You may have a point, but we cannot ignore the fact that the Grass Empire is a neutral power and the Fire Empire holds trading relations with the Grass Empire. Although we're not officially allies, we cannot ignore this as well. Even so The discussion came to a halt when a soldier burst into the office of the Hokage, his eyes as if he had seen a ghost. "Hokage-sama. We have a huge problem," the soldier screamed at the top of his lungs. Asuma turned around with an irritated look. "What could it be this time, huh? Can't you guys handle things on your own instead of always relying on the elemental knights?" No one was surprised by Asuma's rude remarks. Asuma regarded anyone who was not an elemental knight as somewhat of lower status than him. The Hokage, however, saw the look of an emergency in the soldier's eyes and realized this was important. "What's wrong?" Sarutobi asked. The soldier tried to calm down, but he hurriedly explained, "The blade of the kitsune. Hokage-sama, the blade of the kitsune has been stolen." Now Asuma and Genma were all ears, and even the Hokage's eyes widened at the news. The legendary weapon that was once held by the first elemental knight in the world, Senju Hashirama, had been stolen. "Not just that," the soldier continued, "but from what I heard, it seems that the thief is able to wield the blade." "What do you mean by that?" Genma questioned. The thief is covered in flames and has no problems holding on to the sword." Everyone in the office now knew what this meant. The legendary weapons chose their users, and if one tried to hold the sword, there would be a great weight placed on them. When Kushina was gone, it took at least 10 people just to carry the sword to the Konoha Museum where it was placed. However, Kushina and Hashirama never had a problem wielding the sword, signifying that the weapon had chosen them. And now, it seems that this thief was chosen as well. The Hokage stood up from his seat. "Asuma. Genma." Both elemental knights turned to the Hokage. "I want the two of you to apprehend the thief." The Hokage then turned to the soldier. "Where is the thief? Last we saw of him, he was still at the Konoha Museum." I assume he's still there." With all the information they needed, Asuma and Genma rushed off in a hurry towards the Konoha Museum, leaving the old Hokage alone in the office with the soldier. The soldier did not know whether he should follow suit or to await the elemental knight's leader orders, which was the Hokage. Sarutobi finally glared at the soldier and smiled gently at the young man. "Young man, I want you to get to the barracks and get as many soldiers as you can to the Konoha Museum. I'll gather some of the elemental knights and I'll head to the Konoha Museum after. Yes, sir. The young soldier was about to move but then had to ask another question. Hokage-sama. Is the situation that bad? That we need so many of us? The old Hokage said nothing for a moment before he uttered the words, I hope not. Konoha Museum. Naruto was still covered in flames and none of the museum guards dared to approach the blonde. During the whole ordeal, Naruto had not screamed from the burning pain because the flames were not harming him at all. The flames danced on the skin of Naruto and his clothes while Naruto held the sword in his right hand, standing in the center of the small room. The short conversation in his mind with the strange fox ended as soon as it began. When Naruto opened his eyes, the sight that greeted him was slightly different than he remembered. In front of him were several museum guards with their weapons drawn out and staring at Naruto menacingly. Naruto also then realized that he was on fire, but for some reason he was not surprised that he felt no pain. It was like a warm embrace, a blanket protecting him from danger. Naruto wanted to move but then realized that he had no control over his actions. It has been too long since I found a worthy one to use me once more, a voice echoed in Naruto's head, let me use you for a while in return. With that, Naruto realized he began moving although he did not want to. Naruto had become like a passenger of his own body, watching what he was doing through his eyes even though he was not controlling his movements. Just enjoy the show. Don't worry, I won't do anything that'll cause you too much trouble. I just want to see how the world fares. The voice said as if it was to reassure Naruto. Unable to do anything, the spirit of the weapon controlled Naruto to walk towards the guards and held a confident grin on his face. Naruto's eyes were no longer his blue pupils but transformed into thin, red slits and the fire on Naruto burned much more wildly. Stand back. One of the guards ordered, but the fact that he was shaking while holding his sword revealed his feelings. Stop. The other guard shouted, if not, we'll have no choice but to kill you. Naruto, however, just continued on walking and was just a couple of meters away from the guards. Finally the guards took action and both struck Naruto at the same time. Naruto, however, treated the two guards like a human would treat an ant, insignificant and hardly worth the time of Naruto. Both guards attacked viciously but Naruto saw through all their attacks and dodged each of the attacks without any effort. During the fight, other museum guards had arrived but dared not to attack and witnessed Naruto almost dancing with the two guards while avoiding their blades. Playtime's over. Naruto said in a deeper voice. With a swing of the kitsune's blade, both of the guards' swords shattered in pieces. Both guards dropped on their behind in fear but Naruto ignored them, walking past the guards. None of the museum guards made any effort to stop Naruto, afraid of the legendary weapon and the user. Naruto casually walked through the corridors of the Konoha Museum, his flames roaring wildly on him. All of the museum staff had already been evacuated upon discovering that Naruto could not be stopped by the guards. Then, two figures sporting the elemental knight's attire appeared before the blonde. Naruto, stop what you're doing. Shikamaru cried out. Chuji was next to Shikamaru but was frightened stiff at the mere sight of Naruto. From his point of view, it looked like Naruto had transformed into a demon, his thin, slit eyes and body wrapped in flames with the legendary blade of the kitsune in his hand. Oh! I recognize that outfit. Naruto said in amusement. It has been some time since I saw the elemental knights. Naruto then grinned menacingly at the two and pointed the blade of the kitsune at the pair, shall I test them out? At this point, both Shikamaru and Chuji realized they were in deep trouble as Naruto walked towards them. Within Naruto's mind. Stop it. Naruto cried from within his mind, they're my friends. You said you won't cause trouble. Please. Stop whining like a baby. I chose you to be my new master because of the huge energy I can feel resonating from you. I didn't expect you to be such a crybaby though. I don't care what you think about me. But don't harm them. The demonic fox spirit chuckled at the threat. And what are you going to do about it, brat? Until I release the hold I have on your body, and until I have had my fill of fun, I'm not going to stop. The spirit thought that was enough to silence the young blonde and was about to cut off the connection when suddenly the fox spirit felt a powerful force pushing him back. Then, an invisible force began to choke the fox by the throat, suffocating the fox spirit. Wah! What is this? The fox spirit struggled to speak. Let them go. Naruto's voice boomed. This is from that brat. Impossible. Even when Kushina and Hashirama were my masters, they never overpowered me. Ugh. Then the fox spirit grinned despite being choked. I guess that's why I chose him. Back to Konoha Museum. Chuji and Shikamaru stared in confusion as Naruto was leaned against the wall of the corridor, holding on to his head in pain. It appeared as if Naruto was struggling with something, screaming in agony, but both Shikamaru and Chuji did not move. What's happened to Naruto? Chuji said in despair, why did he want to attack us? Shikamaru watched Naruto for a moment before he answered, I don't think that is Naruto. Huh? What do you mean? The legendary blade of the Kitsune is not fully studied, but what Kushina-sama and Hashirama-sama had mentioned in their time as the wielder of the blade was that there was a spirit within it. I believe that Naruto could be manipulated by that weapon. Shikamaru explained. Are you sure? It's just a theory. We don't know anything about that weapon, but we do know that it contains a spirit. Maybe it's testing Naruto's will? I don't know, but I know that the one we see in front of us right now is not Naruto. So what should we do? However, Shikamaru too wished he knew the answer to that. It was bad enough that they were without weapons, but Shikamaru had not anticipated this to happen. He was a natural strategist and had come up with different tactics, but this was not one of the scenarios he had anticipated. However, Naruto answered Shikamaru's dilemma. Alright, I won't hurt them. Naruto growled and glared at Shikamaru and Chuji, I'll just have my fun with others then. With that, Naruto spotted his escape and jumped to a nearby window and crashed through the solid glass, shattering them into pieces. Both Shikamaru and Chuji did not move an inch, Chuji because he was still shaking from fear of the deadly aura that Naruto was letting out, and Shikamaru because he wondered if his plan to let Naruto get a hold of the blade of the Kitsune was a bad idea after all. Once Naruto landed on the streets outside of the Konoha Museum, most of the civilians that had been waiting outside the museum screamed in horror and ran away. The sight of a Naruto wrapped in flames would definitely give an impression of a demon after all. Naruto took the time to observe his surroundings, pleased to finally see the outside of the museum after a decade. Nothing had really changed much in the past 10 years, maybe only the response time of the Konoha army maybe. Well, which one of you wishes to give me a good warm-up? Naruto taunted the Fire Empire soldiers that had surrounded the Konoha Museum. Indeed, there were at least 50 Fire Empire soldiers all surrounding Naruto, even archers on the rooftops and on the ground were men equipped with shields and spears. However, none of them dared to give the command to attack the blonde wielding a legendary weapon. After all, many had heard of the skills of both previous owners of the blade of the Kitsune, Uzumaki Kushina and Senju Hashirama, and both were fierce in battle. Naruto looked left, and then right. The sights of frightened soldiers were all that greeted him, and it disappointed him. The spirit of the blade of Kitsune wondered what had happened in the past 10 years or so. Well, maybe even 20 years, but the point was that the current generation seemed to be much weaker than he had hoped. Warm up. A voice was heard, well, after I'm done with you, you're going to wish you never asked for it. There it was, that was what the fox spirit had hoped for. A sound of confidence was what the fox spirit detected in the voice, and that was what he had been expecting for. Genma appeared from the crowd of soldiers alongside Asuma. Asuma had his trench knives equipped on his knuckles while Genma had a standard katana drawn out. The two elemental knights stood before Naruto, staring at one another as if judging each other. Another elemental knight. Well, I think you guys, he won't mind if I break your nose. Naruto stated with a grin. Wait a minute, aren't you that kid that failed the elemental knight exams? Genma said and then began to laugh. Oh, let me get this right, so you failed the exams, and now you want revenge? Man kid, you're going down the wrong path quickly. I guess we made a good call failing you. Inside the mind of Naruto, the blonde was fuming with anger over the unfairness and mistreatment of the elemental knight for failing on purpose. The one in control of Naruto's body, the fox spirit, could feel the anger transferring to him, and the flames on Naruto's body grew wilder according to the fox spirit's emotions. Be careful, Genma. Asuma warned. The kid seems a little different. He is wielding the blade of the kitsune. We don't know what might have influenced him. Don't worry. In the end, he's just nothing but a civilian with no proper training. I'll take care of him in a second. Genma then turned to the group of soldiers behind him. Watch closely how an elemental knight will bring down a foe you are all afraid of. With that, Genma charged towards Naruto head-on. Naruto, however, made no defensive stance and merely watched on as Genma got closer and closer. Genma had the affinity of fire, so when he was about to strike Naruto, Genma covered his blade with red flames. You want to use fire against the one who wields the blade of the kitsune? I am the weapon that holds that element. You are 1,000 years too early to try to use that on me. Naruto shouted with fury. Genma thrust his katana forward, but Naruto swung his sword instead. When it came to same affinity battle, the one who possessed the stronger affinity could break the other user's weapon. Thus, when both weapons met contact, Genma's katana wrapped in flames shattered into pieces. Genma was shocked by how easy he had lost in the battle of a fire affinity, but Naruto gave him no time to regain his composure. Naruto delivered a thunderous kick on Genma's chest, throwing the elemental knight off his feet and crashing against several soldiers on the way like a couple of bowling pins. Some of the soldiers that were not hit quickly surrounded Genma, only to find that the hot-headed elemental knight was already knocked out cold. Asuma took one glance in the direction Genma had been kicked and saw the result of the kick. While Genma at least seemed to not suffer any fatal injuries, the fact that an elemental knight was so easily defeated revealed that Naruto was not the same. Well, he is wielding the legendary blade of the kitsune after all. Asuma reasoned in his head. Not a lot is known about the sword other than that it contains some sort of spirit that chooses its owner. Is that what happened? Had the brat gotten himself possessed? I hope you'll prove to be more of a challenge. Naruto taunted towards Asuma. Asuma smirked at the remark. You'll regret challenging the elemental knights. I believe I just made an example out of one of you. Gra. Go to hell. Asuma dashed towards Naruto and raised both his hands like a boxer would. As his weapon of choice, Asuma sported trenched knives which he had on both of his knuckles like a pair of brass knuckles. On the trenched knives, Asuma had coated them with the wind affinity, his natural element and considered one of the most offensive elements in the world. Unfortunately for Asuma, there was one problem. The natural elements followed a formula where one element had the advantage over the other. In this case, the blade of the kitsune had a natural affinity for fire and fire had a natural advantage over the wind affinity. However, while each affinity was stronger than another did not automatically mean that fire would always defeat wind, but it simply meant that Asuma would need to use a lot more energy to overpower fire elements. Both Asuma and Naruto fought courageously and neither of them could defeat the other. All of Asuma's attacks were parried by Naruto flames, and when Naruto returned with a swing of his sword, Asuma managed to dodge them. But as the battle between the two dragged on, the winner of the fight was slowly becoming much more obvious. Because Asuma had to coat his trench knives with more wind affinity just to remain on the same level as Naruto, it meant Asuma would approach exhaustion much sooner. Asuma's attacks became much sloppier and lacked the power to even be a threat to Naruto. Finally, at one point, Asuma swung his right hand in an arc, but Naruto sidestepped the attack and delivered an elbow on Asuma's cheek. Asuma grunted in pain and blood seeped from the corner of his lips. Asuma then tried to knee Naruto's stomach, but the attempt failed as Naruto appeared behind Asuma in a flash and smashed the handle of the blade of the kitsune on Asuma's skull, immediately knocking Asuma out. The Wind Affinity user fell face first on the cold earth, defeated. All of the soldiers of the Fire Empire watched in disbelief and horror as two of the Fire Empire's elemental knights had been easily defeated by some guy that held on the legendary weapon. Now the soldiers' fears worsened as now Naruto searched for new prey, staring at all of them with delight. Well. Perhaps quantity will be able to entertain me more? Naruto stated with glee and then licked his lips. All of the soldiers were trembling at this point. Naruto. That's enough. A voice warned. Naruto narrowed his eyes and turned towards the source of the voice. On a nearby rooftop, several elemental knights had arrived, but the one in the center was the one who spoke. A small ray of hope grew on the soldiers as they realized who it was. The last student of the Yellow Flash of the Fire Empire and considered one of the strongest elemental knights in the Fire Empire of the present time. It's the White Fan Uchiha. He's come to save us. A soldier screamed in delight. Hatake Kakashi. Please save us. The rest of the elemental knights were about to engage Naruto when Kakashi raised his right hand, telling them to stop. The elemental knights obeyed without even questioning Kakashi and watched as the silver-haired elemental knight jumped down from the roof and landing on the ground before approaching Naruto. Naruto, what are you doing? Kakashi asked. I remember you, you're Kushina's husband's student. I see you that you've grown from what I remember. Naruto remarked with a grin. It was then that Kakashi came to realize who he was speaking to. So you're not Naruto, at least not at the moment. You've always been a sharp brat since those days. So you are a spirit within the legendary blade, and you can see everything when Kushina was your owner. Naruto scoffed, of course. But this is the first time that you've taken over your host. Why Naruto? Naruto made no answer and simply shrugged. I have no particular reason, but this kid, he's going to be unique. In any case, I need you to stop this rampage. You've caused enough trouble for everyone. Heh, and if I refuse? Kakashi narrowed his eyes, then I'll be the one to stop you. Naruto laughed at the statement and grew even more excited and rested the legendary sword on his right shoulder. Omoshiroi. You talk a lot, but can you actually put action into your words, or are they just for show? Show me what you've got, Hatake Kakashi. Kakashi prepared for battle as well, but did not reach out for his standard katana that was in its sheath. For this occasion, Kakashi instead grabbed his other weapon that was strapped on his back, and everyone, the Fire Empire soldiers and the elemental knights watching, realized that Kakashi was serious. Kakashi normally used the standard katana as his weapon, but he had another weapon. It was a short gladius that he had strapped onto his back and only used in the most desperate of situations, and the gladius was the weapon Kakashi received from his late father. Even the fox spirit that was possessing Naruto recognized the sword. The white gladius. Naruto muttered to himself when he saw Kakashi's weapon. The white gladius. It was basically a short sword, longer than that of a dagger but much shorter than a sword. What made the weapon so special was that the gladius radiated a bright white color and the gladius could nullify any element. Basically, with this weapon, Kakashi could never be defeated by an element of any kind, and only unless his opponent was the better warrior. The only way to defeat Kakashi was through superior fighting skills. However, the white gladius was not considered a legendary weapon. It was definitely one of the unique weapons in the world, but did not reach the level of a legendary weapon. Let's begin. Naruto cried and went on the offensive. When the fight had gone on for a couple of seconds, people then knew why Kakashi had the nickname of White Fan Uchiha. For reasons unknown to many, Kakashi had been accepted into the Uchiha clan and was trained in their arts, and many knew that the Uchiha were masters of the counterattack arts. Basically, the Uchiha mastered in staying on the defensive, reading the enemy's attack pattern before utilizing that information and turning the tide of the battle. Even with the legendary blade of the Kitsune's affinity of fire, it could not break through the white Gladius's neutralizing affinity. Kakashi blocked, parried and avoided all of Naruto's attacks with apparent ease that even everyone could see Naruto's growing frustration. Kakashi was unmatched in Konoha. Some even speculated that Kakashi could defeat the old Hokage if he was serious, but had never done so in the ascending competition. While the two were fighting, they were not aware that the Hokage had arrived as well. The oldest Elemental Knight witnessed the fight and saw that it was Naruto, the kid that should have passed the Elemental Knight exams yesterday, was the culprit of stealing the legendary weapon. But what interested him more was that Naruto seemed different. Whatever it was, Sarutobi would question Naruto later, but for now the situation needed to be resolved. Some of the Elemental Knights approached Sarutobi. "What should we do, sir? While Kakashi-san is busy with the thief, we should come up with something to apprehend the boy." Sarutobi then took out his favorite pipe, lighting it up. "There is no need for that. I've already ordered someone else to take care of the situation." "Hokage-sama?" Sarutobi gave no further explanation and simply gestured for them to watch. Naruto and Kakashi were still busy crossing blades with each other that neither of the pair noticed another Elemental Knight had snuck up behind Naruto. "You want to interfere in the fight? Get out of my way!" Naruto snarled. The other Elemental Knight possessed brown hair with a nice build with a pair of black eyes. The man then revealed his weapon, a large stick that was as long as a katana and on each end was bright red in color. On the side of the stick were ancient inscriptions of a foreign language. However, Naruto's eyes grew wide in fear when he recognized the weapon. That weapon. "Where did you get that?" The unnamed person did not answer and instead charged towards Naruto and smashed his weapon on the side of Naruto's face. Naruto screamed in pain and dropped to his side in agony. Then everyone witnessed a spectacular scene. Slowly, Naruto's flames faded away and his eyes returned to his cerulean blue from the red color he had. The blade of the Kitsune also lost the flames and Naruto looked up at his assailant. The one wielding the stick. Then Naruto lost consciousness, probably due to his energy being used up or from the blow given by the stick. Now that Naruto had returned to normal, all of the Elemental Knights quickly surrounded the boy, and that included Kakashi, with the Hokage approaching Naruto. Some of the Elemental Knights tried to pick up the blade of the Kitsune, but the weight was far too great and it was clear who the legendary weapon had chosen as its master. "What should we do with the boy, Hokage-sama?" one of the Elemental Knights asked. The Hokage said nothing and instead looked down at the unconscious blonde, and then he smiled. With so many witnesses, no one could argue with what the Hokage's decision was going to be. A couple of hours later. When Naruto awoke a couple of hours later, he realized he could not move his arms. He tried to move them again only to confirm he was not dreaming and opened his eyes. Both of his arms were chained to a chain lock attached on the wall, and also Naruto realized he was in a soft bed. This was not his room in the ramen restaurant. No, he was somewhere different. It was then Naruto also realized he was not alone. In front of him was Hatake Kakashi staring back at him. What happened to me?" Naruto asked, still bewildered by the situation. Kakashi raised his eyebrow. "You don't remember what happened?" "I remember, visiting the Konoha Museum, and then, some crazy dream I had." "Well, let me tell you this. You weren't dreaming any of it. What happened was real." Naruto gulped. "So what? You're going to imprison me for touching that sword?" "Let me tell you, I didn't want to. It's like, there was something calling me to touch it." "Well, whatever the case, I can assure you we're not going to imprison you. On the contrary, we're going to do something else instead." Naruto did not like where this was going, and that is. Kakashi smirked before he gave an answer. "Let's just say that, after what has happened, with you being chosen to be the owner of the blade of the Kitsune, that you're going to become an Elemental Knight after all." "Huh? was only Naruto's response. I'm an elemental knight. Naruto repeated in disbelief. But I thought. The higher-ups decided to revoke their earlier decision of failing you. Kakashi replied. However, Naruto was no fool. All of the elemental knights had failed him just because he had no military training background. Now they wanted him to become one of them. No, even an idiot could tell something was up. Kakashi saw Naruto's eyes demanded an explanation, so the silver-haired man did so. They changed their decision after the spectacle they witnessed earlier. Naruto looked out the window and saw it was already dark. Was it midnight? What do you mean by that? Naruto asked. Kakashi moved towards the window, staring out into the darkness. The blade of the kitsune is a legendary weapon. No one can wield it unless the sword allows it. After hearing what had happened and how you actually managed to defeat 2 veteran elemental knights, the higher-ups feel you're priceless to them. They feel it'd be a waste for you to become nothing more than a regular soldier. So they want you to become an elemental knight instead. As soon as he heard the reason, Naruto's mood grew dark. His eyes were emotionless and his fists clenched on the bed sheets and his blood was boiling with rage. Kakashi stood where he was, staring out into the night through the window. The famed elemental knight could understand Naruto's anger. He had the right to. Naruto tried to control his anger as he spoke. So. They just want to use me. I guess that's a fair assumption. Kakashi's matter-of-fact answer merely aggravated Naruto more. Well, screw this. I'm not going to be a puppet. Just because I'm finally useful in their eyes, now they want me. Well, they can just go themselves. Kakashi sighed and turned to face Naruto. I agree. You have every right to be angry, Naruto. I'm not here to convince you to join the Elemental Knights. I just wanted to let you know of the situation. Kakashi then made his way for the door with Naruto watching his every step. Kakashi reached for the doorknob and then said. But, I can't blame the higher-ups for wanting you. You're unique now, Naruto. With those words, Kakashi walked out of the room, leaving the blonde alone. Once outside of the room, Kakashi found the old Hokage waiting for him. He had his arms behind his back with a knowing smile on his face. Kakashi greeted the man with a tired smile, although it was difficult to tell since he wore a mask. How's he doing? The Hokage asked. Kakashi and the Hokage were now walking side by side. Kakashi sighed, he's recuperating, but, about the matter you asked me to attend to with him. He said no. Actually, I'm not surprised. Considering what had happened in the Elemental Night exams, I don't blame Naruto for refusing the offer. They rejected him once. And now, just because of his potential. Sarutobi chuckled, it is rare to see you become so emotional, Kakashi. You're right. But even on a neutral standpoint, anyone knows that Naruto has every right to reject the Elemental Knights. Sarutobi nodded in agreement, indeed you're correct, but... Kakashi turned to the Hokage, waiting for the old Hokage to continue. Sarutobi smiled and glanced towards Kakashi, but I believe he'll make the right choice. Before Kakashi could argue, the Hokage gestured at the person that just walked past them, yes. He'll make the right choice. With Naruto. Naruto was all alone, and his anger had not yet decreased. Actually, it was the opposite. He could not forgive the bastards that now wanted him now when he was the new user of the Blade of Kitsune, but before this, they rejected him. They spat at him but now they want him. For all Naruto cared, they could kiss his ass. With nothing to do for now, Naruto took his time surveying his surroundings. The room was pristine clean with a white ceiling and white walls. A hospital room was Naruto's guess. Naruto tried to get off the bed but he realized his hands were still chained to the bedposts. Naruto struggled for a moment, the clanking sound of the chain noisily banging against the bedposts. It was useless. The chains were not coming loose. Resigned to his fate, Naruto noticed an object on the far corner of the room. Naruto's eyes widened when he recognized it. The blade of the kitsune sat at the corner of the room. Naruto recalled Kakashi's words that the legendary weapon chose its owner. If another tried to wield it, its weight would be too much to bear. It would take at least more than 5 to 6 people just to have carried the legendary sword into this room. Then, his anger returned. The mere sight of the weapon reminded Naruto of what his current situation was. "Yo Naruto." Naruto was startled by the voice and realized that someone else was in the room. It was Shikamaru, and next to the Nara was Chuji. "Oh. Hey guys." Naruto replied weakly, "What are you guys doing here?" "Well, for one, we were worried about you." Shikamaru said, "How are you feeling?" Not too bad, although it'd be nice if my hands aren't locked to these chains." Shikamaru chuckled and then looked at Naruto in the eyes. "Well. That's nice to hear, but I got a question to ask Naruto." Naruto said nothing and Shikamaru asked, "Have you considered the Elemental Knight's proposal?" Almost immediately, Naruto's eyes grew dark. The trigger had been pulled. "So, you knew. Everyone among the Elemental Knights knows about the proposal, Naruto. And you know they rejected me. Why are you even asking if I considered the proposal? I thought you're a friend." Naruto said in anger. "And I am your friend, Naruto. But I'm also an Elemental Knight now. And while I know what they did to you is wrong, you're now the new master of the Blade of the Kitsune. You're a valuable asset to the Fire Empire." Naruto glared at Shikamaru in disbelief. "What? No, I'm not going to let them use me as they please. You say you're my friend and yet you want me to become an Elemental Knight only because I'm the new user of the Kitsune's blade? There's no way in hell I'll become an Elemental Knight just because of this." Naruto was fighting against the restraints of the chains, but he could not break through. He wanted to strangle Shikamaru. In his mind, Naruto could not believe Shikamaru actually supported the idea to join the Elemental Knights. Sure, it was his dream, but they rejected him. And only because he was now a valuable asset, they wanted him back. There was no way in hell Naruto would become their pet. Chuji could not bear to witness two of his friends getting into an argument. It was a pain to his gentle heart. Chuji was about to interfere when Shikamaru threw his left arm in front of Chuji, stopping the Akimichi. "It's okay, Chuji, this won't last long," Shikamaru said. Chuji wanted to protest, but the look of the usual lazy Nara was one of determination. It was rare for Shikamaru to be involved in something too troublesome for him. The Nara then returned his focus to Naruto. "Let me tell you something, Naruto. The only reason I ever approached you about the idea of becoming an Elemental Knight was because of your potential." "What do you mean?" "Unlike Chuji, who wanted to help you achieve your dreams, that was never my motive." Shikamaru explained, "I had a guess that you might be able to wield the Blade of the Kitsune only because you share the same name as Uzumaki Kushina. Call it a wild guess, but it paid off. That's the only reason why I wanted you to become an Elemental Knight. To become the new wielder of the legendary weapon." "Shikamaru," Naruto was saying, but Shikamaru quickly cut him off. "I know what you want to say, Naruto," Shikamaru interjected, "and I admit, the circumstances of why the Elemental Knight want you is definitely troublesome. But you keep spouting nonsense about being used, but don't you think by becoming an Elemental Knight, we're already being used?" "What? What are you talking about?" "The Elemental Knights. We serve the Fire Empire and it is our duty to fight for it. Give our lives if we have to. Don't you think that, in a sense, we're already being used by the Fire Empire? That's what I feel. Becoming an Elemental Knight in the end is just being used by the Fire Empire to serve her cause. And I'll gladly be used to serve my home," Shikamaru said, and then turned to look at the legendary weapon sitting in the corner. "Yes. In a sense, I'm also using you from the very beginning. I hoped that you could inherit the legendary Blade of the Kitsune, and you did. You actually are the new wielder of the Blade of Kitsune. Naruto listened to every word that Shikamaru was saying. The Nara sighed and turned back towards Naruto. I won't force you to become an elemental knight. I can understand why you refuse to do so, but I'd like you to at least consider the option. With your powers, this war can maybe end sooner than later. That's all I wanted. To end the war. It's been just far too troublesome. Shikamaru finished what he wanted to say, feeling mentally exhausted. It was like he had run a marathon. Naruto had nothing to say and merely looked back at Shikamaru. The Nara heir and Naruto locked eyes. Chuji could feel the tension between the two, looking back and forth between Naruto and Shikamaru. As if giving up, Shikamaru sighed. So troublesome. The Nara heir then turned around and walked out of the room. Naruto was at a loss. His anger was gone. Shikamaru's words had shaken his core, broke the very foundation of his anger. In the mind of Naruto, the blonde wondered if Shikamaru had a point. The elemental knights were in a sense being used. Not just the elemental knights, but the soldiers as well. They all would have to give their lives if the situation called for it. Was this what his dream would have led to? Chuji cleared his throat, catching Naruto's attention. Naruto, please forgive Shikamaru. Chuji then bowed down. Naruto did not know what to say and merely released a huh. Chuji was looking at the door where Shikamaru walked out and then back at Naruto. Shikamaru. He's got every reason for wanting to end the war. Actually, it's more like he wants to do everything in his power to end the war. Still, he should understand from where I'm coming from. Naruto retorted, the elemental knights. I don't like to hold grudges, but why should I work with the very people that screwed me over in the first place? Shikamaru understands that. Naruto. I don't blame you for thinking badly of the higher-ups. If he understands it, then why? Because, like I said, Shikamaru wants to end the Great War as quickly as possible. Naruto scoffed, everyone wants the war to end, alright? That doesn't mean he has to. Shikamaru lost his older brother to the war. Chuji interrupted. Huh? Was the only word that escaped Naruto's lips. Chuji looked down at his feet, as if he was guilty for something. Shikamaru. He had a brother once. Shikamaru wasn't the lazy guy you know now, far from it. He was energetic, passionate and full of life. He got all of this from his older brother. Shikamaru and his brother were close, almost inseparable. But because of the war, his brother was an elemental knight and died in the line of duty. That was 5 years ago. Naruto had nothing to say as Chuji continued explaining, the death of his brother changed Shikamaru. The energetic, happy Shikamaru transformed into the one you see today. A realist who never laughs again. His lazy character is just a facade, to throw people off. He's incredibly smart and anyone who underestimates him loses to him. That's why he's so determined in trying to end the war. He doesn't want anyone else to lose their loved ones like he did. Naruto was flabbergasted. He could not imagine Shikamaru as a guy who was, well, energetic. His lazy character seemed to suit him, but it was not his true self. Also, the words that Chuji said allowed Naruto to recall the words that Kakashi had warned him in the beginning. You might think becoming an elemental knight is just living the life. People adore you, people respect you, but you pay a big price for that. I've lost a lot of my friends, my loved ones, and I will probably lose others as well in my life. Kakashi stood up, staring down at Naruto. You see these people here? Kakashi gestured and Naruto looked around him, the people still watching them. Can you swear upon your life that you can protect them? No, don't answer that. I know you can, I've already seen that. But, with your skills, you're just going to be throwing your life for no reason. You're too weak, Naruto. Kakashi himself had lost his loved ones, but he still pressed on. Naruto hated the fact that he would be used if he became an elemental knight, only allowed to join their ranks because of him being able to wield the blade of the kitsune. But was it not worth it? People were dying in this war. Many more will lose their lives. If he could end the war, was it not worth being used by the elemental knights? What do you think I should do, Chuji? Naruto finally asked, his eyes pleading for an answer. Chuji said nothing. For 5 seconds, the two stared in silence. Then finally Chuji answered, the right choice. The right choice. Naruto muttered. He took a glance at the weapon sitting at the far corner, the only weapon that he could use. Chuji, Shikamaru, Kakashi, all of them probably had something they lost. And there were probably more. Everyday soldiers who were fathers, husbands, brothers, uncles, wives, sisters, and were killed in the war. And the war had been going on for too long. Naruto sighed, Chuji. Mind doing me a favor? Chuji was a little perplexed, wondering what the blonde wanted. And after listening to what Naruto wanted, Chuji agreed. Next morning, the old Hokage strolled the silent corridors of the hospital along with Kakashi, their destination towards the blonde's room. The morning was chilly, the cold sinking into the skin. When the Hokage knocked on the door and heard no response, Kakashi opened the door and the sight that greeted them shocked them. The bed was empty. The chains were dangling by the sides of the bed and most importantly, Naruto was gone. Kakashi cried in disbelief, running to the bed and touching the bed sheets, hoping to find Naruto was somehow invisible and was still on the bed. While Kakashi panicked, the Hokage remained calm with a knowing smile. Hokage-sama. We need to find Naruto. Kakashi remarked. The Hokage shook his head, there's no need for that. I know where he is. Hokage-sama. He even took the blade of the kitsune with him. Sarutobi said. Noticing the missing weapon. Hokage-sama, what are you saying? Do you know where he is? Do you know what he did? Sarutobi nodded patiently, walking out of the room. He made the right choice. Hyuga Hinata was already in the training grounds of the Hyuga compound before even the sun rose up. She was disciplined this way at a young age. The Hyuga was a family with a long history of soldiers. Most of them entered the army of the Fire Empire, but there were some who entered the ranks of the Elemental Knights. Hinata was one of the new recruits. Her father was a veteran of the Elemental Knights as well. And among the Hyuga, Hinata's family was considered the elite, the higher Hyuga. According to the Hyuga history, the Hyuga family was once split in two. They fought each other for years. Then a century ago, the Hyuga family was finally united as one. However, it came at a price. The side that lost were named the lower Hyuga and had to serve the higher Hyuga. It was a humiliating title, but the family endured. Good morning, Hinata-san. A voice greeted behind Hinata. Hinata yelped, spinning around to find her cousin, Hyuga Niji. Hyuga Niji was draped in the Elemental Knight's uniform. He entered the Elemental Knights a year ago. While Hinata was the shy Hyuga, Niji was the ideal soldier. He was brave, skilled, and possessed charisma. Both Niji and Hinata are among the higher Hyuga family and are actually cousins. Another major difference between the pair was that Hinata found the higher and lower system in the Hyuga cruel while Niji felt that it was fate. Good morning, Niji-kun. Hinata returned, giving a bow to the elder Hyuga. Good morning. Niji returned, come, we should get for the Hokage Tower. All new Elemental Knight recruits are to report there today. Hinata nodded and the older disciplined Hyuga led the way. During the journey, most of the young women tried to catch the attention of Niji. No one could blame them. Blessed with good looks, Niji was the equivalent to Sasuke the previous year. His serious attitude, rugged features, and the fact he was from a prestigious family was more than enough to boost his hot appeal. Niji ignored the attention however. Hinata also had a lot of secret male admirers. Her shyness just added to her charm apparently. Of course, being blessed in the chest department was another reason. The difference between Niji and Hinata was that none of her admirers dared approach her. Niji was very protective of Hinata and none dared to upset the prodigy. At the Hokage Tower, all of the new recruits were already waiting for the rest. Hinata quickly joined her cousin while Niji departed. "I'll see you at the opening ceremony." Hinata nodded. All veteran elemental knights were to attend the ceremony of welcoming the new elemental knights. Hinata was greeted by Kiba, the only person who talked to her openly. Hinata returned the greetings and spoke with her friends. Everyone was excited about finally entering the elemental knights. The only quiet one was Sasuke, with the girls still trying to get his attention. Hinata was the only exception to this. While she could admit that Sasuke was indeed handsome, she was never drawn to that. He was too arrogant with a foul attitude. After about a minute, when all new recruits were assembled, a senior elemental knight called them to the same vast hall where they took the elemental knight's exam. There, all veteran and senior elemental knights stood at attention. They were all lined up on the left and right, forming a line in between them. At the other end of the hall was the Hokage. All elemental knights. At attention. All veteran elemental knights on the left and right row stood at attention, their hands placed on their sides and legs planted firmly on the ground. The new recruits walked between the two rows of elemental knights, pride swelling in their heart. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience as well as a huge honor to be inducted. When the new recruits finally reached before the Hokage, the old elemental knight gave a warm smile. "Congratulations, everyone." The Hokage began, clapping for the new recruits. The veteran elemental knights clapped as well. Once the clapping died down 10 seconds later, the Hokage continued, "To become an elemental knight is no simple task. You have all worked hard for this. You've studied and trained diligently for 8 years in the military academy. You have impressed us at the elemental knight's exam. You have earned the right to become an elemental knight. Congratulations." All veteran elemental knights shouted in unison. Instantly the whole hall was erupted by thunderous applause. This time the applause lasted longer than earlier, nearly a full minute. The new recruits all laughed, cheered, smiled, and accepted the praise. After a while, the clapping died down and silence entered the hall once more. The Hokage cleared his throat, catching the attention of the new recruits. "But while it is an honor to become an elemental knight, do not forget your duties. The pride and honor of an elemental knight. Do not besmirch the proud name of the elemental knights. To protect the Fire Empire and its people. We shall. Then so shall it be. As the elemental knights reigns over all, so shall the Fire Empire continue to prosper. For the people. For the Fire Empire." The Hokage cried out. It was a quote directed from the first Hokage, and many repeat this quote to this day as a motivational speech. The new recruits cheered happily. Behind the Hokage, another person stepped up, and at first, none of the new recruits recognized who he was. He was in completely new attire after all. The attire was an elemental knight uniform. The person stood proudly next to the Hokage, his back straight. And then on his back was a large sword, strapped to his back. No one could recognize the person because when they last saw him, he was not wearing the elemental knight uniform. Shikamaru and Chuji recognized the great weapon on the person's back and smiled to themselves. Sasuke was the next person to identify the person. "Is that the civilian blonde idiot?" Sasuke said in disbelief. The new recruits that heard Sasuke gasped in disbelief. All of them looked at Naruto, and slowly, the resemblance was there. No doubt about it. Uzumaki Naruto, draped in the elemental knight attire with the legendary blade of the kitsune strapped on his back. And allow me to introduce an edition of the element knights. The Hokage began, presenting Naruto. Perhaps some of you remember who he is? He participated in the Elemental Knight exam with the rest of you, and although he failed at first, after much consideration, we've allowed Naruto to pass and become an Elemental Knight as well." When the Hokage said that, some of the veteran Elemental Knights tried to hold a poker face. Some failed. Some had a look of disgust. Some scowled at the sight of Naruto. Shikamaru noticed all of this and wondered, are Elemental Knights that vain? Just because Naruto's a civilian, they don't want him to become an Elemental Knight? Naruto noticed those looks of disgust as well but decided to ignore them. I thought he failed. I never heard of the Elemental Knights exam giving second chances. One of the new recruits whispered. I heard that the Blade of Kitsune was stolen a few days ago. You think that blonde guy is holding it? Another muttered to her friend. Man, he didn't even attend the military academy. He'll just be baggage. One other recruit whispered. Shino kept his thoughts to himself, refusing to judge Naruto. Kiba was one of the shallow ones, wondering if Naruto had influence over the higher-ups to allow him to become an Elemental Knight. Ino, Sakura and most of the girls were either shocked at this turn of events or gave no care for it. Sasuke, however, was grinning like a madman. This was his chance. His chance to repay the embarrassment he suffered in the hands of Naruto. I know what you're all thinking. Naruto said suddenly, grabbing everyone's attention, you think that I don't deserve to be an Elemental Knight. I know that. Well, to all of you that think that, I don't give a about what you think. Some of the veteran Elemental Knights felt the statement was for them. At first it was my dream to become an Elemental Knight. To be respected by others. But I soon learned that becoming an Elemental Knight is more than just being respected. It's about giving something back. That's why I became an Elemental Knight. A friend helped me realize this, and in return, I want to help him achieve his dreams. Shikamaru hid his smile. This Naruto, always doing stupid stuff. The Hokage released a merry laugh, patting Naruto on the shoulder. A very nice speech, Naruto. The Hokage then faced the new recruits. I hope you're all as motivated as this young man here. You're now all official Elemental Knights. Dismissed. All of the veteran Elemental Knights gave a salute and made their way to the new recruits, congratulating them one final time before leaving the hall. The Hokage walked past Naruto, then stopped, turning back. Thank you, Naruto. Then the old Hokage spoke with the other new recruits. While the new recruits mingled with the veteran Elemental Knights, Naruto was left alone. Shikamaru and Chuji were occupied. Other than those two, Naruto did not know the others that well. Ah man, I said all that just now and acted all cool, but what do I do now? Naruto thought, not moving and standing there like an idiot. Someone then nudged Naruto on the ribs. Need a little help? Naruto turned to the source of the voice and saw it was Kakashi. Oh. Hey, what's up? You've made your choice, huh? Kakashi sighed. Well, in any case, you missed out on a lot of details on becoming an Elemental Knight. I'll ask one of the new recruits to show you around, tell you what you missed out on. You don't need to dash. Kakashi ignored Naruto and scanned the crowd. When he spotted his target, Kakashi raised his right arm and called out, Hey, Chuji. Akimichi Chuji. Upon hearing his name called, Chuji looked around. Then he spotted Kakashi calling for him and quickly excused himself from the group. Chuji was rather nervous approaching Kakashi. After all, Kakashi was a renowned Elemental Knight. It was an honor for even most Elemental Knights to work with him. Kakashi-san. What can I do for you? Chuji asked in a shaky yet excited voice. Chuji, I'm sure you know Naruto here. I need you to show Naruto the ropes. You know, show him around the barracks. Like what we all did when we showed you new recruits around. Kakashi said. Oh. Yeah, sure. Kakashi grinned under his mask, thanks Chuji. Alright then, I'll see you later. With that Kakashi walked away and left Chuji with Naruto. Well, I guess I'll show you around then. Come on, Naruto. Chuji said cheerfully. On the way out of the hall, whispers among the recruits about Naruto filled the hall. Naruto had to ignore most of them. The veteran elemental knights were simply waiting for either Naruto to prove himself as the new wielder of the blade of Kitsune or until he died in the field of battle. Most assumed the latter would be the outcome. The place Chuji brought Naruto to was a big, white building with 4 grand towers on the ends of the building. It had a blue roof and was slightly smaller than the Hokage Tower. There were 2 soldiers guarding the main entrance of the building. Whatever it was, the majestic designs and artistic details on the walls of the building was a sight to behold. Beautiful, isn't it? Chuji said, taking in the sight. Yeah. Even I have to admire its beauty even though I've seen it lots of times. Yeah. I guess so. What is this place anyway? Chuji's sweat dropped when Naruto said that. You don't know? Chuji asked. In response, Naruto merely laughed while scratching the scalp of his head. Chuji explained, this is the barracks of the elemental knights. No one can enter the barracks unless they are an elemental knight as well. Well, it's called a barracks but there's more to it than that. Come on in, I'll show you around. Chuji led the way and Naruto followed behind. The 2 soldiers by the main entrance saluted Chuji and Naruto. Inside the barracks there was the main hall. Inside the main hall were several elemental knights lounging around. Some were chatting amongst each other, another reading a magazine or a book and others simply walking towards wherever they were going. On the left and right sides of the hall was a single corridor, the left corridor leading towards the left wing of the barracks and the right corridor towards the right wing. So this is the main hall. Chuji stated, the barracks is basically divided into 3 separate wings. The main hall is the center wing. As you can see, the main hall is where most of the elemental knights gather. If there is a huge operation involving a lot of the elemental knights, normally they'd be briefed here. Chuji then pointed towards the left corridor, that will lead you to the left wing. The left wing is basically comprised of a number of rooms related to battle. There's a blacksmith room even. Well, the blacksmith occupies 3 rooms though. They just break the walls of 2 other rooms and consider that as 1. But anyway, you get the idea. Libraries containing books about strategies, history, war, you can explore the left wing on your own. Chuji then turned to the right wing. Now the right wing is fairly straightforward. It's basically a dorm for the elemental knights. All regular elemental knights have to stay within the barracks. It is compulsory. We're allowed to return home only during the weekends. Once an elemental knight is of higher status, only then can he leave the dorm. So people like Kakashi. Chuji nodded, he doesn't stay in the barracks. He has his own apartment, I think. Hey, I should bring you to the dorm mistress. Dorm mistress. Well, she calls herself a dorm mistress but she's just in charge of keeping tabs on the ones living in the barracks. She's an elemental knight as well. Chuji explained, come on, follow me. Chuji led Naruto through the main hall. Most of the elemental knights gave dirty looks in the direction of the pair. As the pair entered the corridor taking them to the right wing, Chuji bumped into someone else. Oh. Just the person I was looking for. The person said. Before the pair was a man draped in the elemental knight uniform. He was of an average build with straight black hair and stood at 6 feet tall. On each side of his hips there was a short sheath, probably dagger length. You're Naruto, right? The man asked. When Naruto gave a nod, the man gave a wide grin, all right. I was looking for ya. Blonde hair, new face, yup, fits the description Kakashi-san gave me. The man then faced Chuji, I'll take it from here. Kakashi-san told me I need to teach Naruto some stuff. Right. Before Chuji could make a protest, the man wrapped his arm around Naruto's shoulders and dragged the blonde with him. Naruto struggled to keep the legendary sword on his back. They left the corridor and entered the main hall once more. By the way, the name's Yamada. The man said, finally introducing himself. Kakashi-san told me that you're new and need some guidance. Well, that's how he put it anyway. So, let's head towards the training grounds at the back. I'll see what you can do. Right. There's a training ground here? Naruto asked. That's right. It's out in the back. Of course it isn't as big as the military academy, but it's something. I guess. Yamada showed the way and brought Naruto towards the back of the barracks. Indeed, there was a large field. However, unlike the military academy that had a large field divided into separate areas for use, the barracks training field was comprised of only one large field. It was at least 4 acres in size. All of the elemental knights had to share its use. Currently, only about 4 were using, each of them busy with their own training schedule. There were some that used the military academy training grounds, however. Yamada and Naruto moved towards the edge of the field. Alright now, Yamada began, about what I'm supposed to guide you. Naruto was all ears and Yamada continued, you see, all elemental knights were present during the elemental knights exam. I'm sure even you knew that. Basically, I was there, and I witnessed your fight with that guy. Sasuke. I'll admit, everyone thought you were going to lose, myself included. But, you proved us all wrong. Right. That's right. And just you wait, it won't be long before I become the best elemental knight in the world. Naruto added in passionately. Maybe becoming the best is a little far off for now, but that's why Kakashi-san asked me to train you. You see, your fight with Sasuke showed you had no battle discipline. I mean, you were throwing your fists randomly. Right. Naruto was about to protest, but Yamada stopped the blonde. Oh, you put up a great fight, don't get me wrong. But as an elemental knight, you need to have battle discipline. That's why in your case, I want you to actually combine the two. Your street fighting style mixed with a disciplined method just might create something special. Right. Naruto shrugged, so, how do we do this? Yamada smirked and waved at someone in the distance. It was a girl. At first glance, Naruto immediately recognized the girl. As a matter of fact, he saw her at the Elemental Knights exam. And she was in the assembly earlier as well. So she's a new recruit as well. Naruto concluded in his mind. The girl was a definite looker with unique white eyes. The Elemental Knight's uniform merely enhanced her womanly figure and her assets. Why you called me, Yamada-san? Hinata inquired in a squeaky voice. Yes. Hinata, this is Naruto. Naruto, Hinata. Yamada introduced the two. Naruto gave an energetic, yo, but Hinata merely gave a slight bow and her cheeks were as red as a tomato. Anyway, Hinata here is from the Hyuga family. Just in case you're not aware, the Hyuga family has a long history of being involved in the military. Their family is also most well known for their martial arts and offensive fighting style. Not to mention very traditional. Right. Okay, so what's that got to do with my training? Naruto questioned. Well, starting from today, Hinata is going to be your sparring partner. Both Hinata and Naruto cried out. But why? Like I said, Hinata is from the prestigious Hyuga family. Their style of combat had not changed. Disciplined. For today, I want you to just spar with Hinata using your street fighting, random style. I want to analyze your strengths and weaknesses. Also, it'll help out Hinata since I can figure out her weaknesses as well. A win-win situation. Right. Yamada paused for a moment then added in, no weapons allowed for today, yeah? Just go at it with your body. Right. Hinata nodded and placed her weapon, a nunchaku, by the feet of Yamada. Naruto followed Hinata's steps, placing the blade of kitsune next to Yamada. Despite her shy behavior, Hinata now revealed a much more serious appearance. She moved into a traditional hyuga stance, her right foot in front and her hands straight out, palms open. Naruto merely waited for Hinata to strike first. Begin. Hinata closed the distance, thrusting her palm forward. Naruto was surprised by Hinata's sheer speed and barely avoided the hit. Naruto returned a flurry of punches, but Hinata easily smacked each strike with her palm, like swatting an annoying fly. None of Naruto's hits could connect. The hell? She's different from that Sasuke guy. Naruto thought, throwing another punch only for Hinata to block it. This continued for another 10 seconds before Hinata took the initiative. Naruto threw a straight punch and Hinata swatted it away and took a step forward. She thrust her palm forward and struck it on Naruto's chest. While the blow was not a painful one, it momentarily stunned Naruto since it hurt his lungs. It was a pressurized attack the Hyuga used. Naruto grunted in pain and Hinata took the opportunity. She clasped both of her palms together and thrust forward. Naruto could not react. Hinata smashed her clasped hands right in the face, breaking his nose. Naruto screamed in pain, landing on his back. Ah! I am so sorry. Hinata shrieked, moving next to Naruto and tending to his wounds. Yamada moved to assist as well. Yeah, that ends the spar. So Naruto, I hope you can see that your street fighting style needs to change. Against Sasuke, you probably got lucky. Against a disciplined and well-trained soldier, you'd stand no chance. That's why after today, I want you to train together with Hinata over here. You'll learn a couple of new things with her. Add that with your street fighting tactics and you just might develop something completely unique. Right. Naruto was holding onto his bloody nose but gave a thumb up, right. Hinata was still fretting over Naruto. Cleaning the blood off his nose with a tissue she had. Hinata, you better take Naruto to the infirmary. Yamada suggested, you know the way? Right? Why yes sir. I know where it is. Yamada gave the green light and Hinata helped Naruto to his feet. Before they left, Naruto insisted on taking the blade of kitsune with him. Blood dripped on the green grass as they walked. Despite the broken nose, Naruto was grinning though. He was glad that he learned something new. Sure, he got beaten but this was his first learning experience since he worked at the ramen shop. This was something he learned while part of his dream. He was glad. Once they entered the main hall, Hinata led Naruto towards the left wing. The infirmary was thankfully on the ground floor of the left wing, so it was not too far. Most of the elemental knights in the main hall saw Naruto however. Well, wielding a legendary weapon on your back would catch anyone's attention. Some gave dirty stares at Naruto. I'm so sorry about this. Hinata whispered as they entered the corridor. Naruto shook his head, the blood on his nose now dry, don't worry about it. It was my fault as well. I didn't think such a cute girl like you could pack a punch. See you cute? Hinata blushed red by now. Ah, is this the infirmary? Naruto remarked, mentioning at the room in front of them. Hinata could merely nod, too lost for words. She could not say anything. Her words were all jumbled up. YYYYUCC can goes AAA. Before Hinata could finish her sentence, the infirmary door opened and a woman appeared at the doorway. The woman was different though. Her uniform was purple in color but it was different from the elemental knight. It was a tight-fitting uniform with buttons and she had several pouches on her hips. Oh Hinata. What brings you here? The woman asked. She then saw Naruto, oh my. What happened to him? Shizen-san. He. Injured. Hinata stuttered but could not finish the sentence. Hee, a broken nose, from sparring with her. Naruto explained, are you the, nurse or doctor or something? That I am. The woman answered with a nod, the name's Shizun. Come on in, I'll patch you up. Naruto grinned and pulled Hinata into the infirmary with him. Hinata was a nervous wreck now, still unable to deal with the situation. She had never been called cute. Furthermore, she was never confident about her looks and was never good with men outside her family. So this was all new to her. Naruto, however, was oblivious to Hinata's predicament. Shizun gestured for Naruto to take a seat. Then she began inspecting the injured nose and tending towards it. Hinata just stood by the door, wanting to just run out of the place. She was about to do so when another person emerged from a corner, carrying medical supplies. I got the things you requested for, Shizun-san. The girl said and then spotted Hinata. Oh, and Hinata. This is a surprise. What are you doing here? Sakura handed the medical supplies to Shizun, to which she thanked Sakura. The pink-haired girl then approached Hinata. Naruto was completely ignored. So, what brings you here? Are you interested in becoming a medic as well? Why you're becoming a medic? Hinata managed to ask. Yup. I've always been interested in this sort. I never was a good fighter. I'm not like you guys. So I wondered what else I could do to help. Apparently elemental knights need support as well, and becoming a medic is part of that. So, here I am. While the two girls chatted with each other, Naruto was almost done with his nose. The blonde had to admit, the Dr. Shizun was a miracle worker. Not only was the treatment done with no pain at all, it was done quickly. Shizun was like a machine. She made no hesitations at all and was accurate in fixing the mess up. Naruto also took the opportunity to study Sakura. While she was not as gifted in the chest department to Hinata, she held a much more shapely figure. A woman's figure, as Naruto would put it. Her stature was also oozing with confidence, a total opposite of Hinata. Her unique pink hair complemented her looks and was a beauty along with Hinata. So I was just showing Naruto around when Yamada-san told me to spar, and here I am. Hinata finished explaining. Sakura turned to Naruto, seeing that Shizun had patched things up. Your name is Naruto, was it? That's right. Naruto responded enthusiastically, I'll be the best elemental knight in the whole world soon. Just you watch. Sakura scoffed at that, you talk big but you got beaten by Hinata. Say shut up. I just need to, get used to things around here. Hinata was just showing me how things are done here. How about I and Hinata show you around after this? Sakura suggested. Hinata cried out. Naruto on the hand was surprised, oh. Well, that's nice. Ha. It's the least we can do. The elemental knight is the pride of the Fire Empire. We don't want a single one of us to destroy our reputation. Sakura joked. Suddenly, the door of the infirmary burst open and Uchiha Sasuke emerged from the door. Sakura immediately turned into a fangirl and leaped for Sasuke. Sasuke avoided Sakura by sidestepping to the side, which caused Sakura to leap into thin air, crashing into someone else outside. Naruto. I heard that you were here. Sasuke remarked. Hey, this is an infirmary. People are resting here. Shizun chastised the Uchiha but Sasuke ignored the medic. Oh, duck hair. What is it, you want another beating? Naruto taunted. As a matter of fact, that's why I came. I want a rematch. Tomorrow morning. Training grounds. You up for it? Or are you just a coward? Naruto merely grinned, oh, I've got all the time in the world. The two continuously stared at each other, a deep rivalry forming between the two. Chapter END and this story.